Whenever feasible, one should always try to eat the root. Would you join me at the table?
Welcome to Eat The Rudecast, a podcast about television's Hannibal and the works of Thomas Harris. I'm Cooper, and tonight I have with me...
Hi, it's Miko.
And this is Ophelia.
And welcome back, Kate!
Hello!
Kate Kulzick from the Televerse and the This Is Our Design podcast. We are thrilled to have you back. You've been watching the Hannibal films.
I have. Not all of them.
Not all. You didn't get to Red Dragon?
I didn't get to Red Dragon.
That's
I was at a gig this last weekend. I only had enough time to watch, and I asked Cooper, I did my research, like, okay, if I only have enough time to rewatch Silence or to watch Red Dragon, between those two, he's like, Silence.
Yeah.
Based on your guys' discussion of Red Dragon, a little disdain came through there. And it shouldn't have, because I haven't seen it. Maybe y'all are wrong and it's terrible, but I trust you and I don't think you are. So I made time. I found time to rewatch Silence. I also watched for the first time Manhunter earlier this week, and then it was my first time watching Hannibal. So yeah.
Well, I'm very interested in what you thought of Manhunter.
I think Manhunter, the trouble I had with Manhunter, because I was hoping to be more enthused than I was with it. I think the trouble I've had is that, writing over at PopOptiq and before it Sound On Sight, there's some serious Manhunter love.
There is, yeah.
So I've been hearing for quite a while from my film buddies that, no, you love Hannibal. You gotta watch Manhunter. It's so good. And Brian Cox is great and all this. And I found my experience to be very much in the vein of your guys' conversation, except that I wasn't as engaged as you guys were, because I'm not invested in the Thomas Harris canon, and I'm not particularly invested. This will come up in our conversation here. I'm not particularly invested in Hannibal Lecter
as a character.
I'm more invested in Will Graham, but this version of Will Graham, again, is just not nearly as interesting to me. So, because this is something that I had, we discussed earlier, is that when you guys were saying you were going to go through the films, and is that something like, were we going to do that on This Is Our Design? And I had zero interest I was only interested in the Brian Fuller version of this world. So when I watched Manhunter, I enjoyed parts of it and certain performances, and I do think there's a lot to enjoy there. But for me, it was just sort of, but why am I not watching Hannibal? So there's plenty. I can see why people love it, but I think it had been this blend of overhyped for me by people who love it as a film, and I just sort of saw it as more of an exercise or yes, I can see this, but I think it had been overhyped by some and didn't have enough of a relationship with my preferred version of some of the characters and materials. So it just ended up kind of in the middle for me, but I appreciated certain parts of it, and I really enjoyed your guys' conversation. So y'all weren't kidding about the synth.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Oh, yeah.
That is some glorious synth.
Yes.
So tonight we are here to talk about Ridley Scott's Hannibal. And I say it's Ridley Scott's because it's just much easier to say that than say not the TV series.
Right.
We're talking about the film. This was written by David Mamet and Steve Zaillian. Mamet is a well-known playwright and filmmaker.
Yes.
Steve Zaillian is the Academy Award-winning person who adapted Schindler's List.
Every time I hear Mehmet, all I can think of is coffee is for closers.
Yes. Oh, God, I love that. Very good one.
It's such a good one.
I love all of Mamet's stuff. I love to just listen to
I hadn't watched
dialogue.
it till recently, but
Yeah, that's an undersold element of this film. I was watching it. All I knew about Hannibal before watching it was obviously the rough story beats, because of talking about the series, people saying, oh, this is something that's taken from the film or from the book, which the film is adapted from, all of that. No one said, all I knew about the film was that it had, that it didn't have Jodie Foster, that it had Julianne Moore, and that it had Anthony Hopkins, and that was it. And so when the credits come up, I'm like, Ridley Scott. I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
Okay. That's kind of a big deal.
He's arguably the best element of this film, I think, Ridley Scott.
Yeah.
And then David Mamet, I'm like, profanities. That is a big deal.
One of the reasons I think why they don't talk a lot about Mamet is because he wrote the original screenplay, but that
was roundly rejected.
And it was
having read the original screenplay, it is terrible.
Yeah, it was heavily
easily
rewritten.
the worst thing Mamet has ever written.
Yeah,
Not
terrible.
a good fit then.
The remaining elements feel like Mamet wrote Paul Krendler. Mamet is a very touchy guy when it comes to men and women interacting. And Krendler, everything about Krendler's performance in here, it's like, I bet that's just word for word from Mamet's draft. And when Mason gets extra creepy, it's like, that sounds a lot more like Mamet there. So I think that's more why you don't hear, it's like, hey, from the writer of Schindler's List.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Also didn't hear that.
Yeah. But I think it was like in his contract or something, whatever they had.
Well, he wrote enough.
Yeah.
It's just like the issue that came up with the film adaptation of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. The problem with adaptation is every draft of it is going to be substantially similar because you're adapting a book. And the Writers Guild rules is say if it is not more than a certain percentage different, you get credit.
Yeah, so he still got credit.
So yeah, that's where that comes from.
Yeah.
Rewatching this film, I've often felt that it is by no means a masterpiece. It is very misunderstood, but I think a lot of the misunderstoodness comes from the novel because the novel is a mess.
Yeah.
And it creates a film that's a mess because the filmmakers tried very, very hard to be as faithful as they could, but then just started changing random things, it felt like.
Yeah, I'm going to want to hear from you guys about that, about where the overlap and the similarities come together and where they deviate. Because for me, this is like 2/3 of a really good movie.
Yes.
That doesn't have an ending.
And most of that takes place in Florence, in my opinion. Really, the stuff that is most like the novel is Florence.
Yes.
The stuff that deviates substantially is when we get back to America.
Yeah.
The Clarice tracking Hannibal is also very much from the novel.
Like the novel.
But Mason's story, we're missing Margot, who's a substantial part of the story.
Oh, yeah.
We're missing
huge.
Another character because Mason had his lawyer and Cordell, and they were sort of combined to one character. And the ending is dramatically different.
Yeah.
Like, the end of Hannibal. By the way, this is going to be spoilers tonight for the novel Hannibal. The ending of Hannibal is he gets away with Clarice, and she's substantially drugged. But then it's implied that at some point she stopped taking the drugs, and she's still on Team Hannibal.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm curious what you guys think about that. But that would have been a. I can swear here, right?
Yeah.
That would have been fuck no. That would have not been okay with me. And so I think they knew that wouldn't work for people who didn't know the book and had just seen Silence of the Lambs. I think they just knew, okay, well, we can't do that.
Right.
Yeah,
but what they come up with also doesn't work because what is the point? Why have I spent the time on this? Besides, obviously, there are fabulous scenes, fabulous performances. So there's some really great stuff in there. But when I get to the end of the film, one of the things, again, for me, if I'm watching a narrative film, there needs to be a journey of some sort. Right. And when you get to the end of this, pretty much everybody is in the exact same position they were when the film started. Hannibal has lost a hand, and Clarice's career is in a worse place, though it's implied that she would be somewhat exonerated based on the stuff that goes down. I don't think she...
Or implicated.
Or implicated, but that's about it. Nothing else. Nobody goes through an emotional arc. So you get all this great buildup, and then for me, starting with the end, I'm not as big on the end of the Florence thing. I'm sure we'll get to that. But certainly by the time we get to the end of the film, I keep waiting for there to be something that's changed, and that's where the film falls apart for me.
Well, one of the things. So first of all, the ending. Jodie Foster, the moment she finished the book, called the studio and said, "I'm not making this movie," because she felt like Thomas Harris substantially betrayed the character of Clarice Starling, and pretty much that ending, was it. And so I feel like that led them to rewrite the script, and just. At that point, she's just like, no, I'm not doing this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Scott Glenn wanted no part of it because he had substantial emotional issues with Silence of the Lambs. And he felt like this was a far more brutish and ugly film, and it really is an ugly film in comparison. And Jack Crawford is in the novel.
Okay.
And Ardelia is in the novel.
Yes.
And my biggest problem with the Clarice Starling storyline in this is they took away all her friends.
Yeah.
All of them.
Yeah, because Ardelia's not there. Her other friend.
Yeah, John Brigham is dead in the beginning. He's a friend of hers from Silence.
Yeah.
And to not have Jack or Ardelia and just have her dealing with no-name miscellaneous FBI guy.
Yeah, who's like the mail boy that comes
random
and then
guy in
Paul
basement.
Prendler.
Yeah.
It's so isolated, and it really doesn't give Julianne Moore, who does a fine job. I don't have any issues with the replacement, but she doesn't have anything to do. She has no one to play off of until she's dealing with Hannibal.
Yeah. They strip down everything that happens with her on that end while Hannibal is in Florence when she is looking for him. That is stripped down to nearly nothing compared to what's in the book.
Yeah.
Because while he's, doing his whole, Dante thing with Pazzi and everything.
Dr. Fell.
Dr. Fell, exactly. Over in Florence, she is actively looking for him. And, all that stuff that you see in the TV show, finding out like, oh, this is the kind of wine he would eat. This is the kind of food. That's all taken, from her journey there where she's trying to, and they strip it. They strip all the people she talks to, everything she comes up with. Like when she's in those scenes in like the basement of the FBI and they do all the, it's just her looking at paperwork.
Yeah. Or listening to their conversation.
Or listening to the conversation or looking at the boards. And it's really not showing you the incredible amount of work that they actually show her doing in the novel. So it's stripped down to the point where there isn't much left to her. You're not really seeing, this is Clarice 10 years later who's been through some shit.
Right.
She's been through a lot and she's trying to find her way. She was like, it's like being the star pupil in school and then getting sent out into the world and realizing, well, the real world's kind of messed up. And suddenly I'm not so smart, but I am smart. And I have to figure out how to make my way in this, in this world where I feel like I'm continually a fuck up. And she's working really hard. It was kind of a shame to not see that. There's no character arc for her as how much she's grown. Her conversations with Ardelia, with all of that stuff that's going on there, her dealing with her colleague's death and how hard that is for her.
And then dealing with the loss of Jack Crawford because he dies midway through the book.
Yeah.
And it is really sad, and it really diminishes a very strong character. Yeah. And I mean, that's my biggest issue with the novel. That's my biggest issue with the film. We're going to just start going through this. The most powerful we ever see Clarice in this film is in the opening sequence. And even then, it's dramatically taken away from her so quickly.
Oh,
yeah. Like they start off really, really well. They had the same parallel where she's shorter than all of the FBI guys, and she's the police officers are towering over her like we get in Silence when she's in the funeral home, and they make that clear that she's a small person with a good presence or a big presence when she does the same line like when she was trying to shuffle the sheriff's department out of the
we get to see
we can take care of her again. We've got her. We see her doing that again, but instead of staying that strong female character, it like dies away. It just goes away and she's kind of like holed up in the basement, and that's not her character in the book. Her character in the book's a lot more pronounced and more fleshed out.
Yeah, it is. It's sort of, we get that brief glimpse of it, and then it sort of fades
and then
away.
She gets slapped on the hand or whatever by the FBI when she has the shootout. But I don't feel like the Clarice I read about would have taken it as harshly as the character in the movie did, or the way they portrayed her in the movie.
See, I really liked Julianne Moore throughout this
I thought
film.
she was good.
Yeah, I didn't really know what to expect. And of course, when the film came out, I was like, It's not Jodie Foster. Whatever. And I hadn't seen Silence of the Lambs at that point, and I was certainly not going to see Hannibal. But all I knew about it is they made a sequel to Silence of the Lambs, and they didn't even get back the main character.
Yeah, right.
And at the time, I didn't know that Julianne Moore's amazing. I'm a big fan of pretty much everything I've seen her in.
She always brings something
yeah.
interesting to the work.
Yeah. And on a purely superficial level, can we just say her hair's gorgeous? Gorgeous. Yeah. Anyways, they just like you guys said, it's such a confident start for the character. I think again, so much presence from her, and that really so much of that worked for me. Having the shout outs to the previous film, there's a number of them with visual motifs, and I'm sure we'll talk about the ones that work for us and the ones that don't. But at a certain point, certain of them felt there's a difference between a reference and then just continuing with the same theme. And I had some issues with how the character was, I guess, sexualized at various points. It just seemed like it started out as being a way to view her experience and giving everyone a sense of what it's like to be her. And then at a certain point, the camera felt like it got a little leery. Mm-hmm. So I had issues with that. But other than that, I really thought Julianne Moore did a great job with what they gave her.
Yeah.
Which leads me to my question for you guys, and this is for the book, but also for the film. Who is the main character here? Because I think they don't know.
There isn't in this book. There isn't.
And it's true. It goes back and forth between pretty much Hannibal and
it's
Clarice.
Supposed to be Clarice in the book as well. Mm-hmm. Clarice, we spend a good long time in the book, I think 110 pages or so before Hannibal ever shows up. And he's a presence, but he's definitely a minor presence. So the film, like Red Dragon, was hampered by how awesome Anthony Hopkins is. So let's make him focus. Let's pull everybody else back and make him the focus.
I think they also knew where the money was.
Well, yeah. Mm.
With
this
Hannibal.
film did tremendously.
Yeah.
It broke records. It had a huge opening weekend.
Yeah, they wanted to focus on the villain that was going to bring the butts into the seats.
Yeah.
As much as this story in the book is more Clarice's, continued character arc as she grows and matures, and the sort of chess game she plays with Hannibal, and how we're kind of reminded that she is really good at this and she is really smart, and she's smart enough to figure out, Hannibal's, what where he is by finding his vanities and all those things that he's into, and because nobody can ever find him, he's sort of one of those people who can just poof and disappear, and he's so elusive, but this person is able to figure it out. I mean, how brilliant is she? But that's so diminished because they want to show the number one villain of all time.
Yeah.
They even start this movie with
Barney and Mason talking about
and they
Hannibal.
show the mask.
Let me just say though, that's a movie I want to see. The movie, the version of this where Clarice is the main character.
Yeah.
And it's her story we're following through. That is a story I would very much like to see, and it threatens to be that. The film does for quite a while, and I was fully on board, and then it loses at the end. But I didn't want to sidetrack us. I think that's for me, like, because of course I haven't read the book. At a certain point I don't really care what's in the book. In the film, that's where it falls down. It has so much potential.
Well, one interesting thing that I think you'll be amused by is that in the book, the deconstruction of Clarice's character basically is once she's with Hannibal, he's got her drugged, but he's still having deep psychological conversations with her, and he digs up her father.
Yeah.
And puts, and so there's all this. And then the weirdest part is when Hannibal dresses as her father.
Yeah.
And then it gets
really
weirdly,
weird.
disturbingly sexual in there. And that's where it lost me. I was on board with so much of that book. And it's just like, I don't even know what you're doing right now. I don't get it.
I think we all collectively got to that place when we got there. Because I remember when I was reading it, I found it inconsistent, but it was entertaining enough to keep me going. Because I hadn't, I read it after Cooper did. And I got like a sort of lukewarm, like, okay, if you want to read the book, I'm just telling you, it's not going to be as good.
Especially
as the other
coming off of Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah. Or even, the novel, the Red Dragon novel. And I was surprised that I did enjoy it a lot more than I expected to. But I remember getting to those points and going, whoa, what the hell happened here? We totally derailed. This is weird. And it was. It's so oddly inconsistent and weird. And it's a little uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And it seems a little out of character. I wanted more for Clarice.
Well, I think what it comes down to is Thomas Harris is really good at procedural.
Yeah.
He's not really good at
The dramatic.
anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Once
And,
it becomes
I mean-
like a relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm just not going to read Hannibal Rising. We'll watch the movie, but I'm not reading that book.
I've started reading it. I have to. I'm bound to determine. I want to go there.
I think you've said that the last 2 podcasts that you
I-
started reading it.
Yeah, I'm still in like the first couple of chapters. I keep opening
Clearly,
it.
it's a page turner.
It's more of
down,
a
or
every
maybe I
time
can.
I pick it up to read it, a child
Yes.
comes and interrupts me. So
I will do neither, and I will listen to the podcast and enjoy it.
That'll be
That's what
all you need.
I feel like I'll be good. I'll be good there.
I'll get it done. I'll take one for the
Should we
team.
go
I'll
back
do
to
it.
the beginning then?
I find this interesting is the whole thing about having the iconic mask in the pink cake box.
Yes, when he says that he has a present.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They go through this whole, discussion, which actually is a whole lot of conversation that we don't really need. I just love the line which says, I don't consider psychology science, which totally made me laugh out loud. But you think this thing is all over, and then you get, oh, you have a gift for me. And there's a very creepy kind of, where's my...
Yeah, could I have a cookie, Cordell? I think it might kill you.
Yeah. And so he picks up the pink cake box, which is funny because they're only on the West Coast. I'm like, they're in DC. Why is it a pink cake box? I'm sorry. My brain works.
There are bakeries that do that are not only on the West Coast. you know.
East Coast is primarily white cake box. So, but the whole idea that it looks like a cake or cupcakes or whatever it is, and he opens it up, and you have the insert shot
Of the mask.
and it fills the screen.
And
Yeah.
not the actual mask. You look at that mask and the other mask next to each other, they are not even close.
No.
Not even
Wow.
close. It's actually distressing how different it is.
different. Someone went and bought this at a costume shop.
No, it's like how Freddy's appearance changes from film to film because the designer wants to put their own stamp on an idea.
Yeah.
And so it's far more built up. It's like the other one looks like they took an existing mask, cut the top off of it, put
Which
it
is
on
what
him.
they did.
This one is, we created this thing, this iconic thing.
Yes.
And it feels a little theatrical. At that point.
And that's what it was. The whole thing, when he opens it up and it's in there, it's in like satin or something like that in the background, and it is, they bring it up and they do and it's sort of like, oh, okay. We have to start this movie out by reminding everybody,
Yeah.
it's like a money shot, it's like, okay, let's show the mask because everybody wants to see the mask.
Totally. It's fan service.
Yeah. So that's why I find that kind of funny, the way they kind of did this because this whole scene is not really necessary.
Right.
Right.
They don't really give you a whole lot of information that you need. We already know that, later on we'll find out that Barney's been taking this stuff.
It's necessary only because opening with this shootout
Would've
makes
been-
you feel like you wandered into the wrong movie.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to
Even in the book,
remind
this
people.
does not feel like a Hannibal
not Hannibal.
story. This does not feel like it fits with everything else. And the book's opening is this shootout.
Yeah.
And beginning with Frankie Faison is a really warm way to
Yeah.
bring you back into this world. And I believe you hear his voice before you even
Yeah, you do.
see
Yeah,
It's
he's
a voiceover.
talking about how they
Anything.
used to have conversations late at night.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just again, and then my first note is, oh, Frankie Faison, smiley face. Oh, it's nice to come back in this way.
One of the few returnees
Yes,
from the
yes.
previous film.
My notes are hilarious because I did not have to me, to no one else, but to me, because I did not go in with a high expectation, shall we say, based on the little I knew about it and the impression I'd been given of and the end Clarice goes off into the sunset with Hannibal and WTF mate. So my notes, I stopped taking notes after I got tired of writing, oh, actually, this is good.
Yeah.
This Julianne Moore's really good. And Ridley Scott's doing a good job. I was like, these are all useless notes. I'm just going to watch the film. But I don't disagree with you guys that it's probably not necessary. But it is a sort of nice way to welcome you back. However, how is Barney selling Hannibal's things without asking him not incredibly rude?
Yeah.
Very true.
And you can't tell me that he's not figuring that out or finding that out, because I'm sure he's the kind of person who would be looking up how many people bring.
That Hannibal has enough goodwill for Barney over all the time.
Maybe he gave it to him. You could
be,
if there was some kind, they could have included a little bit of audio of that in somewhere from one of
or an
tapes.
email, a letter. With the nice seal.
Yeah, something but that just feels it felt very opportunistic. And how is this not something Chilton would do? And
it does seem it seems a little uncharacteristic. I could see Hannibal giving him permission, but I don't know if I necessarily think that it's part of Barney's personality to do it.
Yeah.
It feels like they need this to happen for the plot.
Yeah, because
it's really what it is.
He talks about how he only survived because he was being polite. And like you said, it does seem like this would not be polite. Or
he would know better than that. He would know that this should get him killed.
And, And in the book, they kind of hint that he is taking it surreptitiously. He's not being allowed to have it. I think there's...
Well, he stole it because all of the hospitals shut down. And there's a deleted scene from the film where Clarice goes into the old abandoned hospital and goes down into the basement to look through what's still there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right. When we were talking earlier about the main character, who was the main character, I don't know if you guys had the same impression, but it felt like you're going down the path with Clarice during the book, and then at some point it's sort of there. You hit a fork in the road where it's now both Clarice and Hannibal, but the main focus throughout the whole way is the presence of Clarice and her development and her changes. And I think he wants us to think that she's the kind of person who would run away with Hannibal and stay with him, which
she's not.
She's not. And I think if they he went off the rails, and so did the movie, I guess is what I was trying to say.
When it comes down to the question of whether or not, even if a creator intends something for a certain amount of time, I will refer our listeners to the final episode of This Is Our Design to hear extensively Kate's thought on that finale. But if the creator, who in that case is Brian Fuller, in this case is Thomas Harris, intended a character to behave some way, but then it clashes with everything we've learned about that character thus far, is it actually his right at that point to say, no, this is how they are? And a lot of people have made the argument that once Clarice became what she was, she's one of those characters that is born fully formed. Everything about that character is solid from the moment she appears in Silence of the Lambs, both the film and the book. And so this is a betrayal of that character. Thomas Harris would argue she's my character.
I can do what I want.
She does what I feel like she does, not what you feel like she does. And Brian Fuller could make that same argument. I've created this version of Will Graham. I say he wants to run off and be happy with Hannibal Lecter somewhere. You don't get to choose that. But I don't know that I buy that. I don't know that that's okay. At a certain point, the creator does lose control of his work. At a certain point, it happens.
Once it's out there, that's what I would argue. So what I would say is that for this example, I'm so glad that you went there first, because everything you guys are saying about the way that with this arc with Clarice and where it ends up and how it's a portrayal of the character, that's exactly what I think about Will in the finale. Anyways, see, This Is Our Design. It's we have 3. You guys topped us with your 4-hour silence, but we have a lengthy discussion about it over there. But anyways, I would say that in Silence of the Lambs, he establishes his character, and then if he wants to say, and in the next book, she's gonna head off into the sunset with Hannibal. but that's not written,
Right.
then we can say, well, you're wrong. As soon as he's written it, then he can say, yeah, but she does. See, look, I wrote it. And then it's our prerogative as, readers to go, okay, but in my head, this book doesn't exist because this book is not true to my vision of the character. So as soon as it's out there, it's out of their control. They can't say what happens after the end of the book.
Right.
Yeah, and that just is where when you have these series or sequels or anybody like Game of Thrones or the Harry Potter series, any of these series of things.
Young Anakin Skywalker saying yippee.
Yeah, any number of things like that. It's just up to each individual consumer, reader, viewer to determine their relationship with the different phases of a character story. But yeah, I'm tickled pink.
This title sequence is bizarre and different and also kind of amazing. I think.
All the surveillance footage. Yeah.
And having Goldberg variations play over it, and we get Goldberg variations again later in the film. I didn't initially like it because after so you get the title sequence and then the shootout as a 1-2 punch. And it's like, this is not the movie I was interested in seeing. Even though I read the book, this was still, I was hoping it would feel like Silence of the Lambs, and it doesn't at all, which is a very interesting choice and a very bold choice for someone like Ridley Scott to make. This feels like a Ridley Scott film here. It's got a very interesting choices are being made. Like even this opening with Barney and Mason, we first notice it as this little tiny box on the screen that then steadily expands to fill the whole screen. So it's choices, which, unlike Brett Ratner, he made choices, which is awesome.
That was so nice of you.
Burn.
You were very polite.
Yeah.
It's just such an interesting experience watching this for me.
Yeah.
Because, and it gave me a window into what it must have been like for you guys to watch the series, because I'm just watching this going, that's the thing that I liked better in the show.
Well,
A lot of that comes up.
It's back and forth.
Yeah, we go back and forth.
It's like there's these little elements. It's like, well, that's better on the show. That's better in the movie. That's better in the book. Okay. So there's a lot of that.
It was hard to be an immersive viewer in the film for me. And if something like Silence of the Lambs, which it helps that the series didn't fully adapt that, but that was a little easier for me just because it's such a good movie. Yeah. But for this one, it gave me a little distance. So I'm curious. I don't know if you guys want to get into this because otherwise we'll be here all night. But how that affected watching the series? Were you able to fully immerse, or did you just end up with that? How did you not compare the different Masons, for example? Because there's certain things are so similar.
Yeah. I feel like.
Go ahead.
Well, for me, I feel like watching the show to me was so radically different. I was almost able to separate out the book that I had read and the movie that I had seen, and it helped that I had at least seen the movie a long time ago, prior to watching the series, but the book I had read more recently. And for me, it was kind of like, okay, well, I recognize this scene, but I definitely think it's being better or more well represented here. Or if it came from, me imagining it while I was reading the book, I was like, wow, okay, somebody really adapted that and did an excellent job getting it on like a television show. But I feel like it was so radically different. It was easy to not really be affected by the fact that I'd been exposed to it previously.
I felt like it just, I get giddy when things like, it's like, oh, it's that thing that I saw over there. That's awesome. And so like, the reason Mason worked so well, I thought, is because first we get Michael Pitt's insane Joker.
Oh, he's so good at that.
We loved him.
Oh, yeah.
And he created his own thing. And then when Joe Anderson came in, he basically combined Michael Pitt's with Gary Oldman's.
Yeah.
And it's just like, okay, well, that works. I'm on board. I like Gary Oldman's makeup more than Joe Anderson's makeup, but I get maybe you don't want that gargoyle on your screen. Maybe you don't want to have him sit every day for that.
And that
Maybe
long makeup.
you want to let him use both his eyes.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And that's one thing I noticed about. I may even have mentioned that they seemed to not want to cover his entire face, so that he did have a lot more expression. And also, it's like a number of things. When you're doing television, you have less time, so they can't be in the chair for as many hours a day as maybe Gary Oldman could for the amount of days that they're shooting and how long you're shooting, and everything, because you can do several days of him as opposed to every week having to do Mason Verger again and again and again. So you simplify it. And also it's television. You want him to be more expressive. You want him to be able to use his eyes. You're not going to be able to do coverage with tight close-ups that's going to be on a big screen and get to do everything Gary Oldman. Mason's going to be on so quick and so in and so out. And if you have to give him more to work with on a TV show, and you could really tell that they made choices for him that worked with their constraints, and they wanted to give the actor a little bit more to work with. And I was fine with it. I thought that sometimes it was a little too simplistic, where we talked about
when it looked like a
little
Seuss
Dr.
character.
Seuss, character, but he was so wonderful underneath it that easily sort of melted away because his characterization of Mason was so wonderful. And I think the only time I was ever sort of taken out of the TV show was when it was so word for word, it felt like deja vu.
Well, it was because we made the choice. This is more on us than on the show. We held back on watching Hannibal until the week before the Pazzi story kicked into gear. Because we were just so like, oh my God, everything's so good on Hannibal. We need more, and we don't have more, so let's watch the movie. Yeah. And then that episode where the entire Pazzi story played out in a single episode, and it was just like,
it was weirdly deja vu.
Well, movie did that better. That's kind of a bummer.
Yeah, we found ourselves. There's definitely a lot more of the litmus test going on between the two. Yeah,
but that was really it, right?
Yeah, that was it. That was really, I think, the only time it was more Florence than anything else, because Florence was a lot more word for word. Because then we go into the Rad Dragon stuff, and they were doing more of the book than Manhunter or quite possibly even Ratner's Red Dragon was. So it was easier to divorce from it. Whereas there were like times where it was kind of weird. It was like, it looks exactly the same. Like I'd have to go, no, I haven't seen this before. This is actually
right.
The TV show, it just seems so much alike. And I had actually not seen Hannibal before we watched it. I'd seen Manhunter and Silence, but Hannibal came out at a time where I wasn't going to see a whole lot of movies. I had babies. And I wasn't quite interested in seeing anything after Silence because it was so wonderful. So, but they were like, no, you have to see Gary Oldman is here. And it was...
Who goes uncredited. Yeah. It should be noted. He is not... The only reason you know it's Gary Oldman is because we know it's Gary Oldman.
Yeah. Well, and you see a picture of him...
yes. And he does play...
Yeah, they do the flashback.
Creepy, sexy Mason.
Yeah. The psychedelic pirate shirt, the poet shirt.
Totally Lestat.
Yeah,
he's so Lestat in that. Oh, the tight leather pants and the billowy white shirt and the long blonde hair. I'm like, that is Lestat.
Watch Gary Oldman is
right
Lestat.
There, especially with his like super crazy, like flirty attitude. I was like, that is straight out of Van Rice.
Flirty, sexy Lestat to that creepy thing he was doing as Dracula.
So just quickly, is this? And again, I don't want to turn this all into book versus
right,
because that's boring for the listeners. It's only interesting for me as the person who hasn't read the book. However, I didn't buy for a second that Hannibal would be the court-appointed psychologist or therapist or whatever, and would show up, and then in the same moment as he's introducing himself, drug him, get him to cut off his face, like. That's something. It just rang so false. It took me. I was following along. I was in it. I was following like no, that this doesn't make sense because it's too reckless. You'd be immediately traced back to him. How and that issue came up for me later with Pazzi when like there's a crowd of people outside.
And he just peeks out the window.
Yeah.
It's like I just don't believe it. I don't believe Hannibal Lecter, a person who went so long before the genius of Will Graham managed to somehow catch him, would just be so reckless.
Yeah, I always felt that that did seem uncharacteristic. I think from what we've seen of him drugging people, that doesn't really seem out of character. But going to someone's house on a social call seems
in the book it is far more like the movie. Hannibal's patient is Margot.
Yeah.
And he learns about Mason Verger. He goes over there to stop Mason Verger.
He realizes he's a monster, and the only way to stop him is
fun with him.
Well, he's
Margot.
playing with his food. Yeah, he really connects with Margot, and I think not having that in this movie, you lose why Hannibal's motivated to do this.
Yeah, because that is really his motivation.
Yeah, that's it's not just, hey, I had this patient who I thought was hot. I'm going to go to his house and mess with him.
Or he's a bad guy who does terrible things to children. So I was like, he's not Dexter. He's not. He's not who Hannibal is. Yeah.
No, he's not. Exactly, he's not the vigilante. That's not him.
Yeah, and they don't even truly get into how Mason's whole thing with the children. They do sort of talk about it when he's like, "Oh, I want to talk about it," but he talks about it with Clarice,
right? Where he's talking about they'll do anything
for chocolate, and I don't think they even fully.
No.
It's hinted, like this guy's slimy. You don't know, and and then she says we're not here for
right. Whereas
this conversation
in the conversations with what you learn through Margot, you realize just how dastardly.
And I think he also. I don't know if there's sort of that mild kindred feeling when he like sort of learns the type of monster that Mason is through Margot that just sort of attracts and like I want to know more. So tell me more. Like he gets more and more of a picture of who Mason is, and I think there's kind of a weird kindred feeling he has with Margot because he knows like the scarred person that she is, literally. So I feel that maybe that drew him in somehow, that just seeing another monster out in the world and just being curious about him and wanting to know more.
What I will say is that Anthony Hopkins is fabulous in that little. He's like a little more. Like I think he plays that perfectly.
Yeah. No, he is oddly British. In the beginning, Mason, would you like a popper?
Yeah.
He does have an accent when he says popper.
He may just be playing with him, and that's fine. But he's just like oddly British there.
Oddly
and knowing
British.
that Anthony Hopkins would have an accent, it's from Wales.
Yeah.
It's fun. And let's okay, we're not going to go through all the we've talked about Clarice getting kicked off. We've talked about all that. Those scenes are dull. There's no reason to deal with them.
The one thing I will mention in them is I liked the little direct look into camera that we get in that there's just a brief one from Clarice in that hearing that she's having. There's just like a little bit of breaking the fourth wall. And it felt like a reference from Ridley Scott to Silence of the Lambs.
Yes.
As you guys discussed, it's such a crucial part of what makes Silence of the Lambs work so well. So I really like that inclusion there. It's like, ooh. Note. And then mostly it works, and not having it. While I don't have any book to base things on, so maybe it's great having those other characters there, but not having anyone in Clarice's corner. Just like it's been 10 years. Jack's retired. I assume watching this, and I'm sure she has friends, but they're all agents, and so they're all very busy. She doesn't see them. It does isolate her in a way that I still had no trouble buying her confidence and her strength, but it just made it a little easier for me to believe her being so railroaded.
Yeah,
for something that was clearly not her faults, and so that that actually did work for me. And when because they were still picking up these threads of she's the only woman in the room, and it's so easy for these idiots that are above her in her job to just throw her in the basement somewhere, to just deal with the PR. That did work for me because she didn't have other people who could argue for her. But no, the action set piece worked for me. There's a couple stupid things in there, but they need to be there to progress the plot. Did we need to have? I feel like I do need to mention. Did all the FBI need to be white and all the bad guys need to be black?
Yeah. That was
ugh.
very apparent to me. Yeah.
A little unpleasant there, especially when you cut out her black friend.
Yeah,
Right. Exactly. Another reason why we need Ardelia.
Yeah. But
Oh yeah, that is very interesting to point out. Yeah, because when and granted, I can see that
All the
showing
police
it
force,
as
all
like
the
old white
FBI.
men, and she being the only woman, it's that the oppressor.
yeah.
How do I get in? Be able to fit into this boys club. But it is true, like how it went from all the bad guys.
Yeah.
And even though it's written that way in the book, that's the person that she is.
Yeah.
But they probably could have had
They could have
criminal-
Had a diverse
criminals
FBI
could be more-
Yes.
squad. There's
Yeah.
no reason why the squad had to have
And
been
I don't know if you're
all white.
going undercover in a profoundly African American
Exactly.
area. Maybe
you would
maybe
want
wanna
more
have a few
agents
FBI agents who are.
Yeah.
I actually
who
was
look like
thinking
they
of that.
belong
Yeah.
there. Otherwise, they do stick out like sore
most
thumbs.
obvious cops
They were all
ever.
Yeah.
They were all walking around looking like they were from the suburbs.
Right? Yeah.
With these very FBI looking baseball caps. And I think I didn't write it down, but I had that thought.
Yeah.
There was a point where
like Clarice's black baseball cap. Who wears a baseball
Yeah.
cap
and
without
none
a
of
logo
them were
on it?
like buying fish or buying
No.
fruit. One guy asked for coffee, but that
Coffee.
was it.
yeah,
I'm gonna sip it.
and that's when I thought he
Very
looked
slowly.
really.
Somebody needs to have
obviously
a grocery
cop.
bag. Somebody needs to be looking like they're about to make dinner tonight. That's
Yeah.
what you should be doing in this market.
No, they didn't look like they came
They were
from
all
that
just sort of
neighborhood.
standing there stiff,
Scanning.
observing the crowd. Like, how obvious.
Oh, yeah.
Seriously.
None of them looked like they were ready to fit in.
Right.
Yeah.
And really, if they're supposed to be FBI, they would know how to do this.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
blend in and.
Go undercover.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, so I'm glad you brought that up because I
Yeah.
didn't write down that.
They
note,
weren't
but
even
that-
dressed properly.
Yeah,
No.
Yeah, they looked schlubby. They didn't look like they were.
They
just
looked
going-
like they
yeah.
were fresh pressed.
Yeah,
And
very.
so out of their element.
They looked like Ridley Scott didn't trust us to know that that's part of what the FBI is supposed to be able to do.
Right. Right, that they had to look this way to look
To be
like
just
FBI.
heads up, these are the good guys.
Right.
These are
Just in
not
case you
good
forgot.
guys. Yeah.
So there was one part I want to mention because I thought it was beautiful when we're doing the surveillance beginning. The birds,
Yes,
the birds that
birds.
make his face.
His face.
Oh yes.
I
Yes.
really liked that touch in the beginning.
Yeah.
I love.
Even though
I
it's a
love that.
little
I
poorly
liked it.
defined. No, it's
I
a
liked
cool
it.
effect. If it were higher resolution and rendered better digitally, it would be
Okay,
even
maybe.
better. But it looks like a 2001 digital effect.
As bad as
CGI.
No, not
CGI
as bad as the CGI teeth.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
We had
on
a
the scale.
listener ask me whether the CGI teeth were as bad as the fruit platter costume for Catherine Martin.
Yeah, Catherine
Okay.
Martin.
Oh,
in
okay.
Silence of the Lambs,
Oh,
the
She had that
okay.
fruit pattern
lovely
shirt.
blouse.
Oh, come on.
The orange
like,
orange
no,
slice
Good with
shirt.
the blouse.
Yeah.
It's fine. It felt like an active choice. I heard a rebellion against her mother.
Yeah, totally.
I'm gonna wear this super tacky shirt. What? You enjoy your $50 shirt from Barney's or whatever. Yeah.
Right.
The last thing I have
Yeah.
in. I don't know if this counts at the beginning, but I'm going to put it in the beginning.
Sure.
Because I'm sure we'll talk about. We will talk more about the music because I will make us talk about it.
Yes.
If nothing else, I really like the ooze as Clarice goes to Muskrat Farms the first time, and it's just it felt and. Maybe you guys can tell me: is that supposed to still be a shitty car, or is that supposed to be a nice car? Because they're like,
it's a shitty car,
Mustang.
but it is a Mustang.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a shitty old Mustang.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it is a Mustang.
I liked that she still had a shitty car.
Yeah.
They felt very, but the scoring was very atmospheric there in particular, as well as having. It just felt so right to have Goldberg early on, and the score I think is very good throughout. But Patrick Cassidy is the composer, but
Patrick Cassidy? I thought it was Hans
Yeah.
Zimmer.
No, Hans Zimmer did the entire movie. Patrick Cassidy did the
Patrick
aria.
Cassidy did the
He did
aria.
the
Okay, I'm
aria,
sorry.
yeah.
Sorry, you're right. Sorry,
Yeah.
you're right. Good correction there. So he did the opera within
Yeah.
Patrick Cassidy,
Patrick did
and
the
Hans
opera.
Zimmer did everything else.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Hans Zimmer did a beautiful job then. Thank you for that. I would have felt terrible. With a lot of the scoring, it felt very appropriate to me. And it really does tonally distinguish it from the other films. I like that each of the films has a very distinct sounding, like between the synth of Manhunter and the orchestral Howard Shore feel of Silence, and then to just go this different direction with this one worked really well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the music was much more sort of a lot more subtle. They didn't feel like they had to do those big swells. And that's because it seemed like that came up in both Manhunter and Silence, where it's like, oh, we're doing an action horror movie. We have to build up the music. And it seemed like here, I don't know whether a lot of Hans Zimmer stuff is kind of like that. He never overwhelms the movie. It's usually something that kind of like integrates so well that you don't even realize you're listening to music a good majority of the time. And I appreciated that in this film, that the music really like worked and flowed and never felt like it swelled up or overwhelmed or was trying to manipulate me with its thing.
This version of Hans Zimmer music is very much akin to the Batman Begins Hans Zimmer music. It's not themeful. There are no themes in here. You couldn't whistle the Hannibal theme on the way out of the movie because there really isn't.
There really
one.
isn't one. Yeah.
I don't know where I was going with that. But it is very nice and atmospheric. Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's not as opposed to the Inception pounding thing, and of course, Brian Retzel has done plenty of his over the top, tell you what to feel music that I've loved in the series. So there's all different kinds, but I just really like that each of the three that I've seen films feel so distinct in that way. I like that they don't try to bring in a different composer to be somebody else.
Yeah.
I love the scene right before she goes to Muskrat Farms, where they're basically giving her the assignment of what to do, and you just see her talking there, and then they sort of dolly right, and there's Krendler.
Yeah.
Staring
at her legs.
Yeah, exactly. Just oozing.
And she does get
asshole.
that, I wasn't speaking to you, Mr. Krendler.
That's
when
what
I'm speaking to you, you'll know because I'll look at you.
Yes.
Great line.
I love that line. I was like,
Yes.
I don't want to go past that and not bring that out because she is so, and this is Julianne Moore.
Great
just
delivery.
Killing it.
Yeah.
Really, really just like she has taken what Jodie Foster has done. She still feels like Clarice. And I think that's what's brilliant about what Julianne Moore brings to this. It's still her and she's still doing her sort of, her way of doing it, but it's so true to the Jodie Foster version, the way she speaks, the way she moves her mouth. I can actually believe it's the same character 10 years later, because sometimes when they recast something, they're so totally different. Where, and in this moment, I really feel like she is Clarice. Sort of like when she tells them, she talks to the local cops. And
Yeah,
is like,
yeah.
I'll
tell you why I'm
I'll
here.
tell you why I'm here. And this is one of those things. But man, she just turns to Krendler, and she has this. If you watch her mouth. She is so like terse and tense.
It
and
feels like she's had encounters like this with him before. Like this is not the first time he
Oh,
has.
yeah.
Well,
and that's the
Krendler
thing,
was
yeah.
part of the
Inquisition?
problem in Silence of the Lambs.
Okay.
Yeah.
The reason the deal fell apart, the non-existent deal fell apart, and Jack and Clarice got pulled off of it, is because Krendler was down in the FBI, the head of the FBI's office, Roger Corman, and was saying, you shut this down, you take them away. It was Krendler's choice there.
Yeah.
Well, and also as we find out later, she's like, I'm not going to sleep with you.
Oh,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
So there's clearly that whole history there. And I just love it's a badass line that could very, very easily been played bitchy.
Yeah.
And it's not
Yeah.
at all.
No, she's so strong.
She also gets that really strong line later in the film when they're talking about whether or not she was withholding that postcard from Hannibal. And he talks about, you get a Bible down here, I'll swear, you swear too. And she's
Yeah.
got a really great fiery intensity here.
She's righteous.
Yes.
Yeah.
let's talk about the beauty of stately Verger Manor.
Yes.
That location is gorgeous.
It is. I believe it is the largest private residence in the United
US?
States.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It was owned by Vanderbilt.
Well,
Not surprising.
It's in South Carolina. It's called the Biltmore.
I was gonna say that's Biltmore, right?
Yeah, it's Biltmore.
And the way the fog is always there, like every time we see it, there's fog rolled in across the plains. And I mean, it's when it's reflected in the reflecting pond, it almost looks like an abstract painting of a castle, not an actual castle.
Yeah.
It's really just something else there. We do get a nod to the eel,
Yes,
which is
'cause
what
the
took
eel-
Mason
yeah.
down in the book, of course, and on the show.
I gotta say, I'm still disappointed we didn't
Oh,
get
Mason's
the right
death
story.
is so worthless in this movie.
And it was actually a choice.
Yeah.
Ridley did not
I
want to
wanted
do that.
to
He thought it was
see
too
it.
much. He thought it was too
Oh,
violent.
It
And-
is.
That's too much, Ridley.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's
that's
so
too much.
interesting to hear Ridley Scott think it's too much.
But because we don't ever see Margot, I guess that's why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
I read somewhere that they just didn't, there was just something about that ending that they didn't like. They didn't like the grisliness of his finish. And to cut that out, they decided to just cut out Margot altogether. So they didn't have to deal with that. And they just did a little nod to it with the eel in the tank.
I wish we had not seen Mason until this moment.
Yeah.
Because it feels like a reveal of a character when Clarice is putting the microphone on Mason's shirt and he brings up the light. As a favor to her, here, let me help you with it. And he brings up the light. It's such a reveal, and to have her not flinch, that says so much about Clarice, which is wonderful. But so what do you think of this Mason?
I think I already mentioned the one eye.
Yeah.
Because that's super creepy, very
the
effective.
dead eye, yeah.
Well done costume, makeup, whatever team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all makeup.
Yeah.
That's
it's
crazy.
fun.
That's the makeup team comes
Yeah.
up with that. Special effects makeup.
When you talk, it's interesting you talk about having how different would it be if this was the first time we saw Mason, because we saw him in the opening scene that recontextualized this scene for me, where this is how he's presenting himself to Clarice. So he, it's like, we know that he can be out of bed because we've already seen that.
Yeah.
It's not, but he's presenting himself as this like,
As
pull
an
back the
invalid,
curtain
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
and like, welcome to my house of horrors or whatever.
Yeah.
He wants to portray himself as this like invalid who can't get out of bed and all of that. And where he's
saved
yeah,
by
it's-
Jesus.
Yes.
yeah, by
Right.
the Riz.
By the Riz.
So
Nobody beats Riz.
I enjoyed this Mason much more than I expected to. It did make me miss some of the scenes we got in the show.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
like that fabulous dinner with Hannibal and Will and also this Cordell was a bit odd to me just because I'm so familiar with Jelko Ivanek.
Yeah.
I'm just like, okay, he's playing Jelko Ivanek.
Yeah.
the role that he gets cast
Essentially.
in.
I did think the Cordell was a little underdeveloped here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and we were talking about that after we watched it.
Yeah.
This Cordell has no reason to kill
Exactly.
Mason.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so he got a little mad at him at one point, and
just-
that's worth pushing your employer into a pig pen for.
To get eaten
I
alive.
mean, because you could kill Mason by not showing up for work,
Pretty
Yeah.
much. Yeah.
and it wouldn't be. It probably wouldn't even count as manslaughter, just not showing up for work.
Right.
Well, and again, the performance from Ivanek in that all of a sudden he's like wilting and he's like afraid and he's like this weakling of a character, which
Yeah.
he's not overly dynamic earlier, but he certainly that feels like the actor listening to the director maybe a bit too much or. I don't know, but yeah, or there's some scenes in the cutting room. That's what that feels like because it feels like a completely different character. But no, I enjoyed most of what we got with Mason. I liked it much more than I expected to because it's not always my favorite character. But it did make me want to see go back and watch certain parts of season 3 of Hannibal,
Yeah.
which like that.
Any
you
excuse,
mentioned
though,
that
really, right?
that estate is so gorgeous. I'm like, yeah, you know what would make it better is if we had Margot and Alana walking around being fabulous together.
Totally.
I should go watch some of those scenes again.
Yeah, we need someone to create the Hulock crossover between Doctor Who and Sherlock that people have made.
Super Hulock,
We need
yeah.
someone to just start assembling the perfect version
With
Cutting
with
all splice
all
them
the
together.
crazy elements and just sliding. It's
Like the machete order.
Yeah, take it as a multiverse. These are things happening in a multiverse, and start crossing the streams.
Well, especially when we get the climax at the farm,
yeah,
or where we have Clarice then cuts him loose, and I'm like, okay, but I could be watching Alana and Hannibal this far away from. I know it's so helpful for the listeners, a visual reference, but
it's fingers away.
with their
away.
faces across from each other, like she's cutting a leather strap, but it should be this leather strap so that we can get that fantastic visual. Like, it's just such an odd thing to as a viewer, as a critic, to be looking at these different, in some ways so different, and in some ways so clearly very closely tied, separate projects. But yeah, but I enjoyed Mason. I enjoyed most of what we got with him. Besides again, like I said, 2/3 of a good movie.
Yes.
We'll get there.
So
Oh, I was going to
Go
say,
ahead.
you guys mentioned this is the Biltmore, and I've actually been there when I lived in North Carolina.
Really?
I had no idea. I didn't take any pictures. It was just driving by it, and now I'm like, man, I had an opportunity, and I didn't. And
Wow.
now I'm like, shoot, I didn't know.
it's always better when you can go after, then you appreciate
Yeah,
You can
it.
really
Well, I
appreciate
mean, I think it costs money just to go walking through the garden.
Yeah, well, it's a
Sure.
it's a tourist attraction.
Yeah, yeah.
You can go there and do tours and stuff like that.
But
so.
it's a tour because of how magnificent it is. I would go specifically because of, hey, it's Berger Manor.
And it's actually been in a lot of films too.
Berger
so.
Manor.
So this subtle thing that we've had hinted at all this time in the attack from Hannibal Lecter on the nurse.
Yeah.
Now we get to see it as a jump scare because
Totally. That
Hans
felt
Zimmer
cheap.
couldn't restrain himself.
Boo Earn.
Yes.
Yeah, not a fan of that.
Yeah. Though that freeze frame on Lecter with the bloody mouth, that's pretty.
That was pretty
That was
gruesome.
awesome.
Yeah.
And very animalistic look on his face, the wild eyes.
I
And,
love how he
yeah.
does that because you saw that for a moment in silence. When
Oh,
he-
yeah.
when he goes forward to get Pembrey.
Yeah.
And it's amazing because you've spent so much time with him, looking so calm in an unsettling way.
Yeah.
And the way he's held his body so perfectly and so straight and so calm and never a waver in his voice. And then all of a sudden it's like, animal comes out and his eyes get wild and his mouth gets frightening and it's amazing.
Yeah. I mean,
And then it's gone.
yeah.
it's gone.
Yeah. And then, no more.
Well, and again, one of the things I really appreciate about this film is that in their attempts to make Hannibal the star attraction, get people in, they because you guys talked about this on, I'm gonna guess it was one of the podcasts recently, the over appreciation maybe of the character, or people being so attracted by the enticing elements of the character that they no longer see the animal, they no longer see the
Yes.
threat.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so I really like that this film, despite my issues with it at certain times, it is fully aware and committed to that part of Hannibal. That part of Hannibal doesn't go away,
Right.
I would say, throughout the film. And that's part of what makes certain aspects of it less satisfying, because when he escapes, it's not like, oh, he's actually, it's not like a character you can connect with. Even something like the Mads Mikkelsen character, he doesn't just like go killing people for funsies. That's not the case. Whereas this Hannibal feels much more like, no, he just will, cuz.
Yeah.
And so that threat, I like that they remained committed to that. And so while that was the first negative note in my notes, was really, guys, okay, I guess we're seeing this. But I like that they did commit to the crazy eyes,
Yeah.
and keep that throughout the film, because I was expecting them to walk that back as they try to make him the suave gentleman. So that was nice, at least.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now we get to spend some time with Barney.
Yeah.
When Clarice notices Barney in the video and decides, oh, yeah, right, Barney, there's a guy. I should go see him.
I know that guy.
Because Mason has an X-ray to help clear Clarice of her dishonor. I really like the dead pigeon thing.
Yeah.
How he sees the dead pigeon and takes it home, and I guess we're implying that the pigeon that was mourning it on the sidewalk also then comes to Barney's house.
Yeah.
You know, like a little bit of a wake.
Yeah.
For that other pigeon. But the moment where Barney asks her to agree for the record that he has not been read his
and
rights.
she talks into her purse.
Yeah.
I thought that was wonderful.
Yeah.
It shows a good rapport, and it shows what's missing because Clarice has a good rapport with somebody.
Yeah. Exactly.
It gives her a sense of humor.
Yeah. And here we get the line, whenever feasible, one should always try to eat the rude.
Free range rude.
And coming from Barney, it's not quite as good, I think.
He says it. He says it in like a funny way.
Yeah.
Like it's an amusing, like,
Uncle Hannibal. He says the craziest thing.
I think that's what I like about it. It totally comes off that way, like something your crazy uncle would say, and you're like, that's what crazy Uncle Hannibal said. He's funny that way. Like,
he's a scamp.
Exactly, and I loved the way he kind of, like, sugarcoated it a little bit, like, oh, isn't that funny that when it's actually kind of horrific,
kind of,
what he's saying. Yeah, so I liked that he sort of did it in this, like, what he said, whenever possible to eat the rude, and it was Hannibal says the craziest things.
Humor, working that close with Hannibal that long and not going insane, like you'd have to be able to have that detachment or just like understand him on his level of what he is and how he is and everything. And so it made sense to me. So I mean I thought it worked well, but sounds like you were less on board, Cooper.
It's fine. It's fine. I mean, I remembered it being said by other people, I think, but I think that memory is colored by the way it is used in the, and has been used in the opening of our show. And and at this moment, I don't know. You probably already know, listeners, but I've been debating whether or not I change the opening of the show to include Barney's version of this for this episode. So, listeners at home, you know whether I did that or not. The most memorable thing for me about this scene, though, is that Barney sure has a hell of a lot of Net Zero windows open.
Yes.
And for those at home, Net Zero was sort of a discount AOL back in the day. The day of slow internet that we see all over this movie.
It was kind of funny that it seemed like it was an entire page of banner ads.
It did.
Like there was no content.
There was no content.
It was it was sort of like a scrapbook of banner ads.
I was very good. Like, why are we seeing? I didn't even make the connection of product placement. I just why is that? Yeah. I'm very confused. Like, I guess it's time.
Net Zero was all. You know what? We are going to be the toast of the town after Hannibal comes out.
Yeah.
Use Net Zero to sell stolen things from a serial killer.
Yeah. Years from now. I had, it's talking about product placement, because they don't really do that anymore. It's been sort of, the rules have changed and you can't really do all the stuff we used to do back in the day that was very obvious. We used to go and get stuff for free to put in there. And I remember going to product placement places and that had all of the different places. And I would just leave with a carload of stuff to put in there. And I've heard since I've been out of the business, they've changed that and all those product placement companies are gone. But it was interesting to kind of go back and look at Silence and Hannibal, where that was still kind of happening, and see the Coke can or whatever it is. You know what I mean? It was like Silence specifically. I kept seeing things and I would write, even in Manhunter. Yeah. I was like, product placement. Because it would be so obvious how they would do it and how. And it does. It's just that an entire screen full of banner ads is such lame product placement.
It would be like if Yahoo bought right. It's like, yeah, Google's awesome, but Yahoo
Right.
is the official browser. It's like
Except
Net Zero
it's
is
30
the official
Yahoo
internet.
banner ads tiled together.
So,
So-
Ophelia found something.
Yeah, strange animal psychology tidbit because it just really got to me. I was like, wait a minute, I thought I heard this somewhere. I knew people who took ornithology, which is a strange class to take. But anyway, birds actually do mourn their dead.
Yeah, they do.
So,
yeah. That's why I didn't find that very unusual because in New York, you see it a lot. That,
They have
and the
little
pigeons will do
funerals.
that.
Like
they will mourn.
they'll
yeah.
cluster around the dead one and kind of look sad.
Yeah, they'll stick with their pals.
As
or partners
horrifically
that
sad
bond.
an image as that is, the idea of birds just standing around kind of looking sad,
Yeah.
I find very funny. Speaking of birds, though, this is one of the best things in the novel, I think, is the
Oh, yeah.
discussion of the roller pigeons.
Yes.
And how shallow rollers and deep rollers and two deep rollers cannot be bred because they'll hit the ground and die. And whether or not Clarice is a shallow roller or a deep roller. Though, to get this information, we're given one of the biggest cheats in the movie. The omnipresent Chilton tapes
Yes.
that are so omnipresent that they even were recording in Memphis where Chilton was not in charge.
Yeah. And apparently, there's also stuff on there that, according to dialogue, it was after when he started.
Yeah.
Because when they talk about it in this scene with Barney, I think when he hands her all the tapes, he actually says that Chilton started taping like after
After your first visit.
your
Yeah.
first visit. And apparently, when you go back, and one of the things that is played is actually before that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they do a lot of fudging with
It
the
also sounds
timeline
like
there.
Anthony Hopkins narrating an audiobook. Like the sound quality is amazing
Yes.
for Anthony Hopkins. For everybody else in the scene, it sort of sounds like they're sitting in a little room with echoey background. But Anthony Hopkins, man, they must have put
Like
that
Chilton
hidden
mic'd him.
microphone on his lapel, for Christ's sake. Because, yeah, seriously, it's audiobook quality right there.
But I don't really care. I'll give it to them because I really do like that roller pigeon thing.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
no, it's
yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah.
And watching her think about that, I think the performance from Julianne Moore was really good for me as she's listening to, let's hope one of her parents wasn't a roller pigeon, especially as her career is in shambles around her.
Yeah.
I'll give him that one because it shouldn't work, but I like the moment. So.
No, I'm on board.
What I will go with and what I will not is constantly a surprise to me. So I will go with this one, apparently.
Clarice gets the letter
Yeah, so she
congratulating her on being the female FBI agent who has shot and killed the most
The most
people.
Yeah.
Yay!
And
It was Kate.
So
the
proud.
letter from Lecter arrives
Yeah.
at the same time, and overblown strings and chorus convey the importance of this letter.
Yes.
Dun, dun, dun.
But I did really love that we got Goldberg variations at
Yeah.
the same time, and that it's Lecter playing it while we're hearing the voiceover of his letter.
Yeah, because we've already, we've, like you said, we were in Florence, but just before this, because I totally missed this in my notes, because you go from listening to the recording and then you blur into Florence and Pazzi, and they're trying to figure out whether Dr. Fell can be part of.
We'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah, but so it is interesting to so he's there.
Yeah.
And that's what he's doing. And so to know that while she's reading this letter, to see him playing at the piano, it's like it was sort of like a nice, like you could imagine him.
Yeah.
Like, I wonder what she's doing now. Yeah.
So things I will go with, omnipresent tapes that
Yeah.
don't make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Things I will not go with, Anthony Hopkins' posture at the piano. Because I'm me. But no, I agree. It was wonderful to have the Goldbergs. It was like,
Yeah.
that's just a little taller. And then, like, this is Bach. Come on.
And we do get little bits that are intended as callbacks to the great Rube speech from Silence of
they
the
affect
Lambs.
your mommy and daddy.
Yeah, and Lecter's crazy overemphasis of mommy and daddy every time he says it in this film. But the good old tornado bait, poor white trash, I like that. I like that it was it was about, are you feeling that you know, Lecter's letters are so passive aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, yeah, do you think your dad was on board with what happened, or would he be upset with you? I don't know. I'm just asking.
Yeah, but in the meantime, he's poking you with a stick.
Yeah,
I love
feel-
your job is to craft my doom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Parts of the letter I really like, the doom, yeah. But the other parts were just so bitchy. I was like, come on. Come on. It made me think of, that's something Migs would say.
Yeah.
I was like,
Not anymore.
apparently, yeah.
And what's interesting too is that I noticed this one. I'm pretty sure it's this letter. The voiceover doesn't match the words in the letter.
No, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
that's
noticed
one
that
of the
too.
other issues of the film is it feels like it was modified heavily in post.
Yeah.
Like there were a lot of decisions being made after they had already finished shooting.
Yeah.
And that's one of them.
If you want to retcon it, that's what she's hearing in her head as she reads this. But that's a real
dyslexic?
stretch.
Leaving out words. and
Well,
moving the
there's certain it's like your dear friend Hannibal. The thing where I noticed it was that there was and so he just said it Hannibal, and the voiceover's like your dear friend
dear friend,
Hannibal
yeah.
Lecter, and like it was just much more.
There was more.
Also,
said
the
than
letter
it
is
was written.
different from that shot to when it arrives in the evidence room.
Yeah.
One of the weird things I really like about this film is very extremely genial Hannibal, which is the goody Hannibal and the okie dokie.
Okie dokie.
Here we go.
Yeah.
I think it's so unsettling because it's so light and so
Playful.
so sort of white bread center of the heartland of America kind of okie dokie
Guy next door.
yeah, and it's just so not Hannibal Lecter.
Right.
But it kind of is for me.
It's
Yeah.
disturbingly mad.
Yeah.
It's like a Mad Hatter throw in or something. That's the way it makes me, or what it reminds me of.
That feels more Hannibal to me than all this mummy daddy stuff.
Mummy.
Yeah.
Again, that's coming from someone who really was familiar with the show first,
Right.
and how anybody who's seen lecturings on Tumblr and the puns knows that you can have a lot of fun with imagining Hannibal say terrible puns.
Those are delightful.
Can I tell you how much I loved that? Was he doing the jokes?
Yeah.
And then you have the great bad reactions from everybody. Whoever did that, thank you.
Yes, that got me through actually a bad day at work because Cooper sent me that, and I'm like, man, and then I started reading it. I'm like, this just made my day.
But let's talk about Florence.
Yeah.
Because we go to beautiful Florence, and the Florence stuff is so my favorite
beautifully
of this
shot.
film.
Oh, so
It's
beautifully
gorgeous to look at, and it's also gorgeous to look at in a way that doesn't whitewash that it is a modern city, so it's dirty and there are bad elements of it. And a lot of films that try to, it's like, okay, now we're going to look at the beauty that is.
Right.
They're just like, okay, well, just turn the camera a little bit to the left so you don't see the graffiti.
Right.
Or they digitally remove it like Amelie did. But that was an imaginary film.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I like that you see this sort of
gritty
darkness in Florence in this film. And that council with Soliato, so we get a new version of Soliato. Just bitching about Dr. Phil.
Oh yeah.
But so there's two moments of foreshadowing of Pazzi's fate in this film. And this is the first one. The first time we see Pazzi, he walks past the floor cleaner holding the cord out like a noose. Mm-hmm. And then later he walks up the stairs past the thing that, that the climbing
Yes. Apparatus.
yeah, whatever that is.
Yeah.
It's a dolly, like a climbing
climbing
dolly.
dolly. Yeah.
So we see twice his doom in the things around him. He is doomed from the moment he steps on screen.
Pretty much.
And he's played by Giancarlo Giannini, who I adore in general, but in this role I think he's superb.
Oh, he is.
Yeah. And the smoking in the back of this room, the smoke is so beautifully lit.
Yes.
I can rave all about the cinematography in the Florence stuff. It almost feels different than everything else.
And all of that felt so natural.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like having been to Europe, people smoke so much. I was really stunned.
Also, in 2001, people in movies smoked a lot more.
Yeah,
True,
exactly.
True. It was more acceptable to show it.
Oh yeah, you could show.
Just
all
go to
that.
Canada. You need to go. You even need to go to Europe. Just yeah. Just go to Montreal.
I've only been in Toronto. Well, I've been Niagara Falls. I was there as a kid, but recently Toronto is And but I don't remember it as much as I remember Europe. Just like everyone, just constantly. But Asia too. It's like every place. But I was in California at the time, so nobody smokes because everything was all like outlawed. So every place I went, I really noticed like how much. The rest of the world actually smokes quite a bit. So it was like cool that they were like the Italian PIs, the cops, and they're back there with their trench coats, and they look like hell. They've been working really hard. They look tired, and they're just like smoking like crazy in the back of this like room where they're having an important meeting.
Well, it's one of the most impressive rooms in Florence. That room, it's an incredibly decorated. Like you look up, and it's all frescoes cover the ceiling in that room, and it's great to see mundanity among that, and they're having the intellectual argument and discussion out front, and here is every man in the back like waiting for one of these guys going to shut up so that I can go do my job. It was really nice. It's like the balance between all of that and them in the background, and it's beautifully shot. And then this is the first moment where we see Hannibal in the film. When he turns around and
with his jaunty
Dr.
hat.
Fell, with his jaunty hat. The predecessor implies I have the job, but I don't yet. I'm hopeful.
Yes.
He's incredibly menacing immediately.
Oh, yeah.
And he knows so much about everyone. Like you were on Il Mostro. You've been reassigned.
Yeah, that's...
Yeah, were you
that
unfairly dismissed from the grander case, or did you deserve
it? Yeah.
That's one of the elements that sort of breaks the whether or not Barney would have been discovered by Hannibal. Because if Hannibal is looking so much into all the people that he's,
well, he might
had
know, but he
contact
can't
with,
really wander back into the U.S. easily without a good reason.
But he could express his displeasure to Barney.
He could write Barney a letter.
He's so meticulous about what people are either saying about him or how he could be caught by authorities, and I don't know. Yeah,
it was probably just thought of as not necessary in this narrative to go back to that. That it was easier to just write that off and make assumptions rather than actually showing it, because they're already giving you a lot, especially in the novel. They pack so much in there, whereas this is necessary because you need to set this up so that everything that happens to Pazzi makes sense. That he would know so much about him and know about his background, and it's kind of
and
creepy.
Immediately know about his family.
Yeah, exactly. And especially in the film, they're doing all that in a shorter amount of time, so that may be where, for all we know, Thomas Harris maybe had an idea of Hannibal thinking that Barney was rude and knowing that he did all this stuff, but it doesn't forward our progress in any way, and it doesn't give us enough. And for all we know, if they had done that, we may be bitching about like we didn't have time for that. We needed to go and do this. So while I have, you're perfectly like right. When it comes to he would be probably
Hannibal would know.
Yeah, Hannibal would know because they really set that up that there is nothing out of his.
Nothing gets past him.
Exactly.
Nothing is getting past him.
Yeah. But it may be a choice of, well, this is what I need to do right now, and Barney is just not something I need to deal with, whereas Pazzi is coming to him and disturbing this little world he is creating for himself and is now a threat to him. So I need to tell Pazzi. It's like a subtle little posturing.
Subtle?
Yeah, maybe not so
it's
subtle.
Posturing.
It's posturing, yeah. But he needs to, because immediately Pazzi basically is saying, I'm here for these for this. Hey, you're a predecessor. He's, not being subtle at all with Hannibal
Right.
about this sounds really suspicious. Oh, there's no note. He's sure he didn't. Oh, and out of all the things that
He left all his stuff in 4 cases with an inventory. Alas, no note.
No note. Exactly. There's a lot of parrying here, and a lot of. I'm pretty sure it's you, and you think it's me, but guess what? If you know it's me, you're dead.
Kind of like the bumper sticker. If you can read this, you're too close.
You're already dead.
You're already dead.
Clarice smells her letter and brings it to the professional centers.
I love the whole thing. I couldn't stop watching it. I want to go rewind.
When they're holding it in front of their nose and just like
faces,
wine tasters. Yeah.
And they have it, on the little tongs, and they've got gloves on. And the way the guy at the end kept
wafting.
And doing that thing with his closing his eyes and how much they knew about it. And I was thoroughly on board. I'm like, I don't know if people can really do this.
Oh yeah, they can.
Yeah.
It's
But-
like super tasters.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
I love when they're like, I wish we could use ambergris. We can't use ambergris. Yes. Which I know about because of Bob's Burgers, by the way.
Oh my God, we watched that too.
Every time that comes up, and on Bob's Burgers, all I can think of is the Futurama episode where Kif
that one
is
too.
covered in it.
Yep.
And he just says, it's precious ambergris. They say ambergris.
Yeah.
2 different cartoons pronounced it 2 different ways. This one goes with gris. I don't know who to trust, but I'm gonna go with the live action film. But then Kif just says, precious hamburgers.
Precious.
Might be found in Europe. We'll give you a list of places where it can be found, including that Japan
right.
store.
Well, they still do the whaling in Japan. So.
Yeah. So here's where we learn about Mrs.
Allegra?
Hudson.
Oh, Allegra.
Allegra.
Where we learn that Allegra is the pretty young wife with the ever-open beak needs opera tickets. Allegra does not seem like a gold-digging wife as a character.
No.
I mean, I feel like in the book, and I don't remember, but I feel like it was always Pazzi trying to keep up with what he perceives she
Yes.
wants rather than what she actually wants.
That's kind of what
Yes.
I got too. It was I got this amazingly gorgeous wife who is so totally out of my league that I'm going to do anything to keep her. But he's so insecure and growingly insecure because he's had this disgrace and all this stuff happening. And it's like, well, I can't redeem myself amongst my colleagues, but I don't want to lose face with my wife. So it's almost like well, if I keep impressing her and I buy all this expensive stuff and you want to go to the opera? Yeah, honey, I'll take you to the opera.
She wants to see it this time, though.
Yeah,
Not like last time.
Not like last
Not like
time
in
where
the
they were,
back.
where they were in the back and there was a pillar.
See, but I like the performance from the actress because she puts a lot of warmth into the character that
She does.
that is not necessarily in the script. I mean, unless it's in the
That would be
stage notes.
Francesca Neri.
But you get the impression that it was like his idea to go to the opera, and she's like, "Oh, that would be great, but if we're gonna go, let's actually see things."
Yeah.
As opposed to her saying, "Well, we need to go." You don't get the
Right.
sense that, like you guys say, because from our discussion of the stuff in the series, I was expecting a much more shrewish character here, but she doesn't seem like that at all. She seems like she's genuinely very passionate about the arts, and it's very moving to her. And he's trying, this is more if he would just talk to his wife, it probably would have been fine.
Oh, dear God, if he would just talk to anybody. He would have survived
he would have
this
survived.
film.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anybody.
But no, I really did like that because that's a conversation that I've had with other friends and family. If it's like, well, it's are we going to go see this band, go see this show, go see this the symphony, etc. It's like, okay, but it's really expensive. But is it worth going if we're going to be say way in the back? You can't see anything, and then should we just spend a lot more on the tickets, or just not go?
Sure.
That makes sense as a conversation to me, and so I just liked. I guess I'm filling in all those gaps myself, but I really liked again, as with some of these lines that we get with Clarice, that could be delivered in a much more one-dimensional manner. With Allegra, I also felt like we got that, and you get the sense from her conversation with Hannibal later at the opera that she has a true passion and knowledge and appreciation for this stuff. It's not like it's a status symbol to her,
Right.
And I think these those little details go a long way in making her feel like in dimensionalizing Pazzi, because he hasn't married some bitchy, gold-digging, shrewish wife or anything like that. But also him not feeling worthy of her because she's so cultured, because she's so passionate, because she's so artistic, all of this. And so making his own problems for himself, that at least from the warmth of the performance, you get the sense it's not just that she's so beautiful, and maybe that's in the book, but it's also she's so smart and she's so kind and she's so all of these things, and he's so insecure that's what brings it all together. Not just that I've got a hottie that I want to impress, so she won't leave me.
Yeah, I think it's also very important to show that the warmth of their relationship.
Yeah.
And her not being a shrewish gold digger.
So that you don't want Hannibal to go visit her.
Right. And also that you believe that he would sacrifice himself. And even though he knows he's going to die, would tell, Hannibal anything he needs to know. To not, if she was some shrew that was awful and browbeating.
It'd be okay, go
fine,
get her.
whatever.
I don't care.
Yeah, exactly. He just
bring her here. We'll eat her together. It'll be fun.
Exactly. I don't think it would be as believable. I think because it's I love this woman so much.
Yeah.
And she's so wonderful, and they are so warm and loving, and this is he's in heaven with this woman. This is everything he's ever wanted, and his insecurity is making him make these sort of poor decisions to keep her, other than just realizing that you could just be a loving husband and it would be fine.
She also chose you.
Yeah, exactly.
Right,
She married you. Yeah.
But I think it makes that scene so much more believable, and what he goes through in the terror of that moment. This is the woman I would do anything for, that I would do this awful thing and sell this person to make all this money to have her I could give her everything. I do not want her to die.
Right.
And it also keeps the audience from wanting him to sell her out.
Yeah.
As well, because we like him. You might not like that he, kills the guy by not staunching the wound.
Yeah.
In his thigh.
Which is one of my favorite things in the Pazzi storyline, that he is so desperate for this to work.
Yeah.
And knows that guy could ruin everything for him. And I think he's like, well, you're going to die.
Yeah. Well,
so
and he picked a scumbag to do it.
Yeah.
And to start with, he's like, and then if something bad happens to this guy, I'm not going to feel bad.
Right.
So again, we might not like that thing about him, but again, we like him because he's smart and he's interesting, and so to make sure that we aren't saying sell her out.
Yeah.
She's a bitch anyway.
Right.
It's and again, that's the kind of detail that wouldn't a lot of people wouldn't take the effort to make sure was there.
Right.
So I like that they do.
When Pazzi...
Sorry, including Brian Fuller. Oh, snap. Wasn't intending to go there, but yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, Pazzi following Lecter, we get a jaunty tune, which is very much like the Pirates of the Caribbean theme, which was also written by Hans Zimmer.
Yeah.
And the Lecter using his handkerchief to drink his wine and then wiping down the glass.
Yeah.
I mean, so if Pazzi didn't suspect him of something before that, well, this is suspicious behavior.
Yes.
You don't have a wine tasting handkerchief? Come on.
Doesn't everybody have that?
Doesn't everybody
least
wipe off their
3.
prints and saliva? I thought that was a thing.
Well, only
Only the most discerning palates.
Right.
So Pazzi stole the tape that his partner or associate was grabbing for the FBI. He logs into the back end of an FBI website with a password that he doesn't need because the 10 Most Wanted is public.
It's public, yeah.
And
I
has
thought that
always
was
been
interesting,
public.
too. I was like, why did he have to log in to see
And
that? That's not
we know it's
secret.
public because Hannibal Lecter saw it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, just a thing.
I was like, did I miss something? Is there extra information? They're going to click on it? But yeah. Okay.
Well,
I'm glad that
he
wasn't-
does read the profile, and we get the gloriously slow piece by piece loading of the image of Hannibal Lecter.
To the younger listeners out there, yes, there was a time that is what it was like.
That is how slow it was.
Yeah.
And that lovely
You got
old
up and
font.
went to something else while the files downloaded.
And heaven forbid someone tried to call you while that was happening.
And then
You'd
it's all
start over.
It's
Yeah.
all over.
I liked the disguise on Hannibal Lecter as Dr. Fell. We only see it really briefly. We see the passport or something, and it doesn't look like he's wearing a phony beard. It looks like he's somehow altered his appearance to look the way he should as Dr. Fell here. And then once he gets the job, I decided to shave my goatee. It's fine, you know.
Well, it's one thing they decide to not use from the book too is that he does alter. His
he has
appearance.
plastic surgery from the.
He actually goes to, was it like Brazil first or something?
Well, he
like
also
that?
removes his superfluous finger.
Yes,
Because Hannibal Lecter has 6 fingers on one hand.
Yeah,
and that, not this X-ray that doesn't seem to show
anything. I thought that was
what was
weird
that about?
too.
It's so Barney broke Lecter's arm when
with the nurse
restraining
thing.
him.
Yeah.
And it's apparently an X-ray from this guy living in Europe, Dr. Fell.
And it's
Why does he have it?
I don't know.
It doesn't make
it
any
is
sense.
scientifically false.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't make any
You
sense.
will not know Dr. Fell's X-ray is Hannibal's arm. You
It's
will not.
an arm.
Right.
It is a broken arm. That
Yeah.
is all they know. There's no way for Mason Verger to know that Hannibal's out there and exists based on that X-ray. The only thing I can think of is if somebody, I don't know, somehow said, "I think this is Hannibal," but even then, you just have a comparison of 2 broken arms that may have been broken in the same place, but that's not enough to identify another human being.
I was so confused by that. I was like, you have 2 people of similar height who, I don't know, fell downstairs.
Yeah.
It's not hard to, okay.
Broken arms
they took a storyline
too common.
And
from an
altered it.
X-ray, you can tell nothing.
Yeah.
You need to have the bone marrow DNA. You can't do that with an X-ray.
So in the book, it was an X-ray of his hand, where it showed where the superfluous digit was attached.
Doesn't matter.
But that's what it was.
Right.
It was an X-ray showing that somebody removed an extra digit from that hand.
Okay.
So that makes
more,
a reasonable
more
assumption. Maybe
rare.
it is Hannibal
It
Lecter.
is more rare, yes, but still, with the amount of surgeries that take place of people removing their extra digit, it would not.
I think it was more of
It is not evidence of Hannibal.
Everybody kept saying,
It
well,
cannot
Dr.
be.
Fell can't be Hannibal because Hannibal has 6 fingers on one hand. Then they produced this X-ray, and they're like, well, he can be if he gets rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, snap.
Snap. Yeah.
This is something that would, if you were bringing something to a court case, wouldn't even be admitted.
Oh, yeah.
It is not it is evidence of nothing.
Yeah.
It is really the most useless thing.
But it is the
they
kind of
throw
thing
in
you
there.
might sell to Mason Verger thinking you'd get a shot
Yeah.
at
But
that.
do you really?
Paraphernalia,
Do you
yeah.
think Mason Verger's that stupid?
Well, he seems very excited by a miscellaneous.
And what they're looking
X-ray.
here is not something that's going to convict him of anything.
I mean,
in a
because
court of law.
he wants a fingerprint
Yeah.
in order to identify that Pazzi has Hannibal. So that makes me feel like, and even fingerprints, and depending on how many point matches you get, are still. But okay, I'm sorry, but
I was going to ask you, 16 point, that's good, right? That seems like that's good.
it's okay.
On TV, it's always like 8 point.
Okay,
I'm like,
but-
that's
Right.
not-
But
Yeah.
if you suspect that that's Hannibal Lecter, and then you get a 16-point reference, and then you
It's
go
enough
and
to pique
visually
your-
see him, and
Yes.
yes, that's
Yes,
Hannibal Lecter,
yes.
I think that's okay.
But I'm
It's
saying-
enough, it's good enough for vigilante work.
But it starts with the X-ray, and the X-ray should have never even
Right.
been part of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Once they removed the 6th finger from the storyline, they should have found something a little bit more concrete.
Or
than the
just
X-ray.
remove that part because it actually doesn't further the plot at all.
No,
All it does is send Clarice to Barney.
Yeah.
That's it.
Like you might as well have had blood type on there. I
Right.
mean, it's
Yeah.
just
And this is one of the problems with this adaptation is it slavishly follows things that once you remove other things, it's like the House of Cards. You remove one piece, you can't just assume the rest is the same. It's not. So it needed to be more creative in how to embrace its changes, and it just really wasn't. We get a brief glimpse of the Wound Man as Krendler is wandering through the pictures on Starling's board there.
Yeah.
And the post-it over the topless drawing of Clarice.
Oh, yeah, and how he
Krendler gets all
leeringly-
excited about.
Yeah.
It's like, man, could he be more cartoony in his leering?
Though I did enjoy then watching Clarice just fuck with him.
Yeah.
It's pretty fun.
Even though she pulls apparently her headphones out of the video input on a VCR that then plays. It's like when someone picks up a remote that I know does not go to the device that they are using, and then tries to press a button that I know does not. It's in the beginning of American Pie. This happened. He's using a Laserdisc remote and hitting the play button to change the channel on his It's like, that's not how that works, and nobody cares, but I care. But it was a great moment when it filled the room. It's like you and Hannibal sitting wrong at the piano.
It's the same thing.
Now, an interesting thing that I hadn't noticed before is this version of Lecter in Hannibal the movie killed Benjamin Raspail, the flautist from the orchestra. In Silence of the Lambs, James Gumb killed Benjamin Raspail. In the book, Hannibal did kill Benjamin Raspail, and James Gumb killed Klaus. I just found it interesting that they changed their own story.
That they used the same name.
Yeah.
They didn't just rename the character. Yeah.
And then we get the aggressively time period-y point of view of Paul Krendler, where he talks about how Hannibal is probably gay.
Oh, he uses the word queer.
He does use the word
but in
queer.
like a very old-fashioned way of using queer.
the negative word queer. And it's just kind of like...
and then he's like, if you have sympathy for those kinds of people.
Yeah.
But we,
I get it.
I'm saying when we get to the end,
Krendler
don't care.
He's a bad guy, I get it. But it just to me, whenever this stuff comes out now, it reeks of a movie, a writer not having the sensibility that I wish the writer had when crafting this kind of line. It's not, okay, I understand, but this guy's a bad guy.
Right.
I'm just going to use words and it'll all be fine.
Forced.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little unnatural.
It just feels like, what are some... Let's make this. How do we make this somebody that the viewers will not like, and therefore will not be against Hannibal when he cuts his head open later?
Yeah,
let's just make him a homophobe and all these other things, and we're not going to put any thought on how that shapes the rest of his character and have this character informed by that. We're just going to give him.
We're just going to pile on negatives.
some bad things to say.
Like this town is full of corn pone country pussy.
Yeah.
Which is a delightful line that is horrible. Just horrible. That feels a lot like Thomas Harris.
Yeah.
I imagine it is, actually, because it is that kind of specificity in the insult. The whole, I feel artsy fartsy. It's So the most identical section of this whole movie to the show is the Pazzi phone call chain thing.
Yeah.
And it is really well done. And we get that gorgeous corridor behind Pazzi in Italy here. It's just stretches out and it's massive behind him.
I liked knowing why there was that giant stack of quarters now. Where I was like, why is there such an obsessively tall stack of quarters? And it's because he's like jingling quarters in this, and that's why.
Yeah. It's just a little shout out.
Shout out that I now get.
Yeah. It's terrible because I kept thinking, it's like, they have phone cards. Why is he not using it?
Well, no, that's traceable. Wouldn't it be a phone card?
Well, no, because you could buy them.
You don't have to register a phone card?
No.
Wouldn't it be like a burner?
Because I was
It
in
is like a burner.
France
Track phone.
at this time.
Use it, throw it away.
I went there in 99, 2000, and 2001. And we used to go to the tobacco and buy telecards. And you could get them in like trying to remember, it was like 90 francs and 100. I'm trying. It's been so long now. But you just go and you buy a card.
Mm-hmm.
It's not registered to you. It's not anything. It just has time on it. And you pay for it, and then you can go to the payphone and you swipe it, and it whatever is in that is in there, and you could just make phone calls until the telecart is done.
I imagine they could like if you called other numbers, like if you called
They
home,
could combine
they
them.
could probably see this card called all these different numbers, but then Pazzi could just not use
Certainly
it.
Certainly a payphone with quarters is
It's more
probably
dramatic.
the least traceable way to do this.
Exactly.
And of course, we spend a couple minutes discussing like priorities for us. I enjoy. I like that I'm around my peers. Like we're all on the same
obsessive geekdom.
Yeah.
Right
It's
here.
how we
weirdest
roll.
things bother us. It's like there are times where I'm like, I don't know why that bothers me. Why am I thinking of that? Why does it bother me?
I want to say how much I love Lecter and his jammies.
Yeah, in his
the
bare
next scene.
feet.
Yeah, barefoot. Yeah, in case
Yes.
my notes say in case he needs to sneak up and kill someone.
Right.
Yes.
All
bare feet.
creepy like.
But in those satin jammies, just hanging out smoking his cigarillo.
Yes.
I gotta say, if Krendler saw that Lecter, it's like, yeah, okay. I think he's a little foppish. He's he's got a flair for the dramatic.
European.
Okay, we'll go with that. But he's not.
But he's playing the part
That's
of being a
true.
European.
Okay.
Dr. Fell is supposed to be.
How about when Pazzi goes to take the knife and Lecter has the camera and he takes the picture and then just says, snap.
Yes. I totally have that written down. Snap. Smoking the thin cigarette. Yeah. Yeah. Barefoot and PJs.
Yeah. Pazzi is really bad at playing it cool, though. And both versions of Pazzi have been. Because when he clumsily tries to get Lecter to pick up the bags, he's just like, no, pick up the inventory. May I see it? Would you hand it to me?
Hand it to me? I know, like he's trying to like lead him on to what he thinks is like a really like clever way, and Hannibal doesn't even flinch.
No, it's
like,
nothing.
It's not even.
Like, are you kidding?
Yeah.
No, I'm not going to do that. I will not gift wrap me for you.
Really? I'm not going to fall for that BS move.
It's almost like it's sweet. You think this will?
Oh, you
that's
think
so,
you're one
it's
step
so
ahead
precious.
of me.
Sure, I will hand it after I get my gloves. I will
on,
hand it to you.
Oh, it's cold in here. I need gloves.
It's like I know you know, and you should know that I know, but you may not, sweetie. You may not quite be at that level yet. No, it's just entertaining.
Yeah.
You're just having fun.
Oh yeah, I love also the way Hannibal looks him up and down while he's fumbling. Like that, there's a moment, I actually wrote it down here, where he's not even moving his head. He's doing that posture.
Yeah, with
that
the
he
chest
does.
out.
Yeah, exactly, where it's very, and his arms are kind of down and nothing else, but his eyes kept like running up and down Pazzi. And I think it's in that, oh, isn't this quaint? Look at and it is, and it's almost predatory. yeah, exactly.
It's like he wants to call Clarice and say, there's a guy here who thinks he's going to catch me.
Yeah.
You got to see this. You got to see this. Yeah.
You should come to Italy. We could have dinner.
You're never going to believe what happened to me today.
Yeah, exactly.
We get the Pazzi ancestry story about Francesco's hanging and was accused of killing Medici unjustly. No, I don't think so. Then he wasn't accused. He did it. Yeah. He wasn't accused. He actually did it. And that shot of Lecter in the shaft of light.
Yes.
Where he's in shadows.
I have a
and
lot
just that vertical
written about
light
that.
there.
Yeah. Because he comes in, he has this shaft of light, and then there's a close-up. When they do the coverage on that, you get to see that shaft.
It's a beautiful
sort of
bit of
three-quarter
lighting,
on his face. And then he moves into darkness. And then and it's almost like a hint to what I loved about Silence. How when he was in his cell, he would be lit and he would move into darkness and then move back into light again. And it always seemed to work really nicely with what he was saying.
Thematically,
Yeah, where you would lose his face or his eyes would go black. And to have that, he's partially lit in this way where there's like, is he good? Is he bad? Pazzi's like trying to figure this all out and you can't tell what's going on. And he's sort of partially in darkness and partially in light. And I love the way that's lit.
And in that shot, he has the wonderful line, people don't always tell you what they're thinking. They just see to it that you don't advance in life, which Lecter is planning to do. With Ronaldo Pazzi in a bit.
When they go to pick up the suitcases, he does his little okie dokie. And he goes, heavy as...
Must be as heavy as bodies. Yes. Oh, that's good stuff. With the pickpocket we talked about before, when Pazzi is going to give him the bracelet, he says, "Wash your fucking hands," and he washes them in that really look, I'm getting them wet.
Yeah.
In the fountain, which then is that wonderful callback after Pazzi's let him die, where he washes his hands in the pig fountain.
Oh, yeah, I wrote that down. I'm like, it's a horn boar, and it's exactly like the pig.
It's really like a foreshadowing to the boars you're going to see.
And
Best fountain choice ever.
They're just in Florence, and it's like, well, hey, that's thematically relevant.
Yeah. There's a great moment right before he does all this where he's leaning against the rail, and he's thinking. And
Pazzi.
Yeah. And what I like about it is that they do, I think it's like a crane shot. They actually kind of come down and they come around him and he's looking down and he's thinking, but he's got this long ash on his cigarette.
Like he's been thinking
he has
for a
not
long
been
time.
moving.
And I'm like, what a great choice.
You have to stay very still to get that.
Yeah. Like he's been sitting there unmoving after having this very unnerving interaction with Dr. Phil. Upstairs. And it is like, you can imagine him sitting there and like, he has to make this choice. He's made the phone call. He knows he has to do this. He has to get and it is. And how long has he been thinking about it that his ash is that long?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just lovely.
Great little touch there.
I enjoyed the perspective, just the highlighting of the difference of perspective of, a Florentine or European person versus myself as an American. I was like, why are you don't get the pretty fountain dirty.
I thought that too.
Why are you sullying that beautiful fountain with your blood?
But it just seems to be a thing.
It's just a fountain.
It's just a fountain.
Like,
when
that's normal.
Everything around you is art. Some of the art is just, I'm just going to sit on it.
That's
because who cares?
I just sit somewhere. Yeah, no,
it's
absolutely.
like Michelangelo did that. It's like, he did all of this.
Yeah.
I was more thinking of like, oh my God, there's like blood in that fountain. What if somebody uses that and so I'm just thinking of the
just drinking from the fountain. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's like, we never handle anything with real blood on it without gloves and stuff like that. So that was my thought when he was doing that. I was like, is that water going to drain? Is that going to sit in that?
You get a bloodborne pathogen. You get a bloodborne pathogen.
So I have a question. I'm wondering why Pazzi had to remove the guy's hand, because honestly, he was going to die within 5 minutes or so from the femoral artery.
Well, Pazzi had to go.
So you think it's a time?
He's
and if he leaves,
you didn't want him to breathe for another 5 minutes.
He might survive long enough to say something to someone, somebody walking by. Hey, help me because I just got stabbed because I was working for a cop. I mean, you don't need a lot of time to say that. And Pazzi didn't want to leave any loose ends while
I really think it's a reveal for the audience.
Yeah.
I feel like it took him more time to hold his hand than it would have for him to just leave. And maybe he didn't know that it was a femoral artery cut. I don't know.
Pazzi knew.
Pazzi knew.
Yeah.
But if time was an issue, he could have just fled the scene.
Well, I think it is more a character moment. It's more about Pazzi sees a potential loose end. He's not even thinking about, well, if I leave him alone, he'll probably die too. It's, I need to make this go away, and Dr. Lecter already did most of the work for me.
Like he's going to die either way.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to make sure he dies when I can see him and when I know that he hasn't. So I don't have to even think about it later. Because apparently he's the kind of person who wouldn't think about it later.
And I like the sort of the reveal of the moment because if you haven't seen it before, you actually are not quite sure. Did he? Maybe he got stabbed. Because he just talks about how
he tried to hit me in the balls.
He tried to hit me in the balls.
but he missed.
And you don't see that he's bleeding right away.
Right.
You can tell by the way he's reacting that there's a good chance he's injured a lot more than just being kicked in the thigh when he's trying to be, or punched in the thigh. But after going, he thought, because this guy thinks he's made it. Oh, he tried to punch me in the balls and he didn't. And then when Pazzi looks down and removes the hand, you see the squirt of the blood, and the audience has that realization.
So we've talked a lot about the death of the pickpocket, but I want to talk about the pickpocket scene, because this is one of the best scenes in the film. And part of it is because Anthony Hopkins' performance in this scene is so nonchalant. And it's like the pickpocket is trying to look nonchalant. Like, no, I'm not following you. And Anthony Hopkins is trying to look like, no, I'm not being followed. I'm just hanging out. Look at me chewing my gum and just buying a newspaper. And that moment where he looks up and sees the pickpocket looking at him, and you see his blue eyes and he's just chewing his gum and he doesn't even register it. But it's like, okay, now it's on.
Yeah.
And at the beginning of the scene, Lecter passes him and his coat flows out and we get this whoosh in the soundtrack.
You get the Batman moment?
It's like Batman, yeah.
Yeah, that pickpocket went to the FBI school of blending into scenes.
Like the guy in Casino Royale, quit touching your ear. So Verger confirms it's Dr. Lecter, and we get the Carlo in Sardinia stuff.
Yes.
This is a prime opportunity to cut out a chunk of content. He doesn't need to be in Sardinia. He could be working on the Verger estate. Those pigs could be on the Verger estate. It is a farm in the book. There's no reason, like the TV show got it just right. There's no reason we need Sardinia.
It looks pretty and all, but
it does look pretty.
Yeah.
But that's something that's taking up valuable time because it is a longer film, and taking up valuable time where other things could be better explained, like, say, an X-ray.
It just shouldn't be there. They don't have to explain it. It just shouldn't be there.
But we get fun Mason Verger where he's listening to the pigs and the screaming. He's like, they sound fantastic. Super.
I love the ciao, bella, come stai?
And there's like, just speak English, dude.
This bad Italian. It is. It's so bad. He thinks he's speaking awesome Italian.
It's perfection.
Yeah.
His accent is flawless.
It's flawless. Like a local.
Perfecto, yeah.
Like Brad Pitt in Inglourious Bastards.
Yeah.
Buongiorno. The Pazzi going to the Swiss bank. I mean, they could not have given us so much more Judas references and imagery before even Hannibal Lecter gets to give us his Judas imagery. And it's like, okay, well, here are your 30 pieces of silver, sir. And but it's great because he's told he just has to point the doctor out. All we need you to do is point him out.
Honestly, they wouldn't even need him to point him out. They'd be like, he's giving a speech here.
Yeah. And here's what Hannibal Lecter looks like. Go get him.
Yeah.
Then Vide Cormium, the most beautiful piece of music I think I've ever heard in a movie, written for a movie, I'll say that. And we get sunset on the river, and this is the sequence where Allegra is dressing. This is such a telling moment when you see him standing on his porch watching her dress without his jacket on, but he's dressed and he's drinking and he's panicky and he's sad because he has that feeling like I'll never live up to what she wants, and knows that I've already paid so much out of pocket for tonight's opera tickets. If I don't get this other shit together, there's nothing. It's all going to fall apart. And it's wonderful. Then Lecter just knows he's being watched at the beautiful outdoor opera and turns directly around. My
suspect was that, he smelled him.
Yeah, that could be.
Like,
I smell the fear on you.
Well, and he's
I
also
smelled you before.
He's also just not being subtle at all. He's
No,
just
of course not.
staring at, and you can tell, like, we can tell when we're being stared at.
Yeah.
I mean, like, the hairs on the back of your neck raise up, and like you just tell something's not right. And so, I mean, that's a normal non-Hannibal person. So
True.
yeah,
But he does hold that stare for a long time and then smile.
Yeah.
But that stare, it's just like, I see you.
I've just
I
looked into
see
the heart of the devil.
Yeah.
See, but I feel like Hannibal, I mean, maybe he's playing with him, but I feel like he would be more interested in the opera.
True.
But then we wouldn't get that sweet moment. So
Right, right. You have to have that Hannibal.
Yeah.
I know you're here.
Yeah.
You think you can just kind of do
Be
this.
around.
Yeah, like I'm not going to know. I know you're here. I know what you're doing. I see you.
And then this moment is
Or be like, pay attention to the performers on the stage.
in this beautiful,
It's
weird
beautiful.
opera. Yeah.
What's wrong?
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, you're stalking me. Yes, come on. However, are you even listening to this gorgeous piece here?
The cast is somehow either forced to stay in costume for the reception after the opera.
yeah, I thought that
That's
was
a thing.
Is that
Yeah.
a thing?
That's
Yeah.
a thing. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, like if it's
I feel
opening
bad for
night.
the poor devil guy, and who looks really wacky dressed up with his little horns.
Yeah.
No, but if it was an opening night and people do things where like they'll come out to the reception still in costume. It's to promote engagement. I mean, like I haven't seen that at the opera. I actually did just go to Figaro at the Lyric for their opening night, and that didn't happen there, of course. But I could see that being a thing, and yeah, that's the thing that can happen at certain things. So
Yeah.
it seems like this is a little high end for that, but it is a thing.
Yeah, this kind of came across to me as it's not a cast party or anything. It's not like an after party because usually members of the audience don't go to that.
Yeah.
Right.
It's usually just production. So I did opera for one summer, and it's like everybody would get dressed and you'd have like a whole thing afterwards. I don't remember them doing that in this one, but I was working, so I don't know what they did.
Yeah.
Afterwards, but I can see that they might have a reception afterwards where you get to mingle with the stars, kind of thing.
Yeah, or especially if you're like a donor.
Yeah,
and
that's
like,
kind of what I was getting at. That this was like the people who like paid extra, or if you're going to come to this show, this kind of special show,
all access pass, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
VIP.
Which then again reaffirms how much Pazzi must be out on these tickets.
Yeah.
Something like that, yeah.
The Lecter enjoyed many excellent meals in America,
Yes.
which I love.
He's just taunting him so much right now.
And he brought a copy of Dante's first sonnet, which he must have lifted from the library he's been charged with helping out at, and then gives it to Allegra. Oh, you
Yes.
keep that. It's like, what? Well, maybe he assumes he'll collect it later.
Yeah.
Maybe he's just not worried about it.
That could be.
I just feel like, he feels like he seems like a person who's done his research, which would mean that he might like Allegra and just be like, she would appreciate this, and she is a person of excellent taste. So why shouldn't she have
it could be a legitimate gift that Hannibal wants to share something that he finds beautiful with someone who also might find it beautiful.
And
Yeah.
clearly it bothers Pazzi.
And
Clearly.
he also can have fun with Pazzi at the
Right.
same time.
He's like, hey, you want to give your wife all these nice things. Guess what I can give her that you'll never be able to give her?
Yep.
An actual sonnet from Dante. Go ahead. Top that. Top it.
I'll be here. Yeah.
Like, what gift could you possibly give her that's better than what I just did?
While I make a cannibalism joke.
Yeah,
And then we
right.
get the could he feel a stab of hunger? We get that.
And then,
We tried to remember where that was from. We thought it was from Hannibal, but we couldn't find that dialogue. And then so when they said it here, I thought that was really great.
Yeah, find nourishment at the sight of him.
And that witty banter that they go back and forth with, it's like, okay, well, Pazzi, you can spend money on these opera tickets, but can you actually have a conversation about the art that she loves so much? You can bring her to it, but do you understand it? Can you have a conversation of real understanding about, the things that she's interested in? And if Hannibal had this pre-knowledge that she has these tastes, I think he would have been like, okay, let's see how far I can go with this, like showing him up.
What do you guys think of this as a conversation about Hannibal and Clarice?
Oh, totally.
Well, no, but I mean, like, what do you think of that? Because I enjoy that. I really like that scene and that thought. And we'll get to the end soon, but I wasn't big on the ending where he like actually kisses her and all of that. I felt like it's too much. It's too like mocking what it feels too close to the things that Hannibal was mocking about, like about Crawford. It's like, oh, does Crawford have the hots for you? You know, older man. Like, it seemed a bit too simple an idea for it to just be like, yeah, he thinks she's hot.
Well, I think here it is that he's obsessed with her strength and her overcoming adversity. He is fascinated by Clarice in much the same way I think in the show he's fascinated by Will. I don't believe they are sexually interested in each other.
Yeah.
And that's a hotly debated topic, but I don't believe it based on everything I have gleaned from it. And I don't believe Hannibal is sexually interested in Clarice. I believe he's fascinated. He may be in love with her, but it's a different kind of love. Hannibal doesn't see things the way we do.
Yeah.
So it is definitely an obsession, and I like this. But you're right. The kiss at the end feels out of place. It feels almost fan servicey, which is weird because I don't know that anyone was craving that.
Right.
Yeah, and also I would pair with that the dress that he dresses her in.
Yeah.
He undresses her while she's unconscious, which talk about rude, and puts her in this.
Well, he had to undress her because she had a bullet hole in her shoulder.
You would have to dress the wound, but I mean,
yeah.
But then
Not
put her
fully
in
undress
and put her in a dress she would
deeply
never.
decolletaged, evening gown. Yeah,
I mean, that just wouldn't be, and I think he's trying to show that this could be her. This is some part of her, like, because with the really nice shoes and everything. But I just, it was a little off-putting to me. Also the way that it was shot too. They're like, hey, actually I'm more looking good. So I really liked this scene, but then when they followed up on it later, it felt like it was a bit much. So hence my question about it.
So Clarice re-enters the story at this point because she has finally seen that tape of Lecter and does the dramatic, oh, I'm dropping everything because of this tape.
Did you guys miss her?
I'm really a fan of the Italy portion. I wish the whole movie was Italy because it holds up. It actually works. I don't feel anything else really does.
Okay.
So I did, yeah.
Let's go around the bend.
No, what do you mean miss her?
Did you miss her when she wasn't featured? So we go for, it's Clarice's story, and then Hannibal takes over. Did you miss Clarice in this portion? Did you want to be like cutting back to her, or were you good with just not seeing her for this part of the film?
I guess yes, in a way, that we don't get to kind of have that blend of the two worlds that I felt was at this point in the book was actually done sort of well. But at the same time, no. I mean, I guess I'm kind of middle of the road as to whether or not I actually missed her storyline. I felt like because they did her storyline so poorly and her doing her investigations on trying to find him seemed a little weak. I guess showing more of her in that role wouldn't really matter to me because it's not as good as I felt like it could have been. I think if they showed her being more active and showed her doing more investigation, showed her interacting with her peers, showed her interacting with Ardelia and all of those people that we missed in this, I feel like it would have added quality to showing Clarice more. But because they didn't really do that, I felt like, what they're doing with her, okay, let's look at what Hannibal's doing in Florence for a little while, and that's okay because I felt like how they developed Clarice wasn't impactful enough for me to miss her, I guess.
Yeah, I can totally see that. Florence is so much more interesting because they undercut so much of her storyline. I think I would have probably missed her more if I was really invested in all the work that she was doing. And knowing how much work she did in the book, and knowing that she wasn't just sitting and staring at walls and
in a basement with her buddy, the file clerk.
Exactly.
Because you could picture that sequence in Silence where she and Ardelia are
going back and forth, working out the problem.
I don't remember, but that felt like that's where Ardelia would have fit in. Is she's talking this through? Like, how do we find Lecter? Let's talk this through with her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have liked more of her going through, like, when you get after the perfume thing, when she's trying to figure out, like, with receipts and
how else am I going to find him?
Yeah, give me, can you look at, oysters and wine and truffles and all her being active and really looking things up. She's so passive, especially after this explosive, strong opening scene. You kind of forget about her because the Florence scenes are just beautiful and dynamic, and the characters are just much more fleshed out. Pazzi is really doing something,
and Clarice is in a basement.
Exactly.
It's much more interesting to see what Hannibal's doing and how he's evading capture.
Yes,
I think I was just much more willing to go with it than you guys were. And again, probably this is because I haven't read the book, but I was just willing to just assume that she's doing all this from the basement. So like she's, and again, giving her the insight, just like in Silence, they give Clarice the insight of he's sewing the thing, which I agree with what you guys were saying in your podcast, that it's such an important thing to give her something distinct. So giving her something like that, like they do in the book apparently, but they don't here, would have been very good. But I was like, maybe a scene of her like getting this giant stack of all these different shops that sell all these different things, and then be like, okay, I guess I got to collate all this, and then we cut and we see what Hannibal's doing in the meanwhile, and just the assumption this would take a really long time.
Exactly. Yeah.
Then I would be fine not seeing her for that time, because so you get the sense of she's on the path, but she's just got a lot of paper. She doesn't have
a lot
a team.
to do. Yeah,
true.
Yeah, even in this, like searching the perfume thing, it's just you just see her do the video, and she looks at some stuff. I love the old FileMaker Pro that she's using there. I was like, oh my god! I actually wrote FileMaker Pro LOL. Yeah, wow, blast from the past. Yeah. But it's like, they don't set it up enough that she has this mountain of stuff to sift through.
Yeah,
because they don't exactly know where he is, and they don't. All she knows is that there's this perfume, and it could be anywhere. It could be Japan. It could be.
Yeah.
You don't really get the idea that she's looking for a needle in a haystack right now until all of a sudden she gets that video, and it's like,
oh, there he is.
Yeah. How stunning that is. You don't get that the feeling of all that time and that work. Yeah.
I do think that Julian does a wonderful job with her pleading with Pazzi to listen to her. Listen to me. I know how he works. He killed 2 guards in Memphis,
3
guards in Memphis, all by himself. And then the way she's playing with him about somebody accessed these files. Oh no, it was from your home computer.
Yeah. Because he tries to like blow it off. Like, oh, maybe it was, we all use each other's computers and we all, and she's like, no, I didn't say it was your computer at work. It was the computer in your home. It's a great, like, Hannibal parallel moment.
Yeah.
Of, no, you think you can fool me, but I know a hell of a lot more about you than you think I do. As I'm that much more clever.
And then we get the speech. Hannibal's lecture, which we've been asked by our listeners to talk about whether we preferred Mads Mikkelsen's performance giving this lecture or Anthony Hopkins. I'm not going to go first. Ophelia, you took a deep breath. Why don't you go first?
I like Mads better.
Mads is better?
Yeah.
Okay. And why?
I felt... I don't know. I guess this is a bit of favoritism in this one. Well, first we've got the devil lineup, which I thought was
that
just
shot of the
visually,
That was
visually
really cool.
spectacular. I felt like his delivery, and maybe this is partly his accent or the way he speaks, like the sort of not American delivery that Mass had versus Hannibal's kind of more English accent. And I feel like his presentation, for just whatever reason, I don't know if it had to do with Bedelia sitting there kind of, in her white dress, looking all terrified. and maybe the little underwhelming of the telephone ring interruption of Pazzi, like,
yes, Pazzi, could you be any more conspicuous on your way in here?
Yeah.
like the professor who has to chide the child or the kid who brought in his cell phone to class, or it just, I don't know. I think it was not necessarily like a whole lot better, but I feel like maybe the cheapness of Pazzi's interaction with Hannibal during the lecture versus the interaction between Bedelia and Mass might be the element that I think is more pronounced or I can't even find the word, impactful.
Okay. Ladies.
I can, you should.
I'll go. I think I like this one more for sort of an interesting set of reasons. I like the setup. And I think it's also, you have to remember, you're comparing a TV show to a film.
Yeah.
Film has more time, more money. They can sit there and set up lighting for a shot and do all this. So I think what I liked about it was it seemed a little bit better crafted, even though I have to admit the superimposing of the devil on nothing will ever beat
superior,
that.
yeah.
That is awesome. But here they do these really interesting shadows. And, there's shadows on the ceiling, and then they go, the foreshadowing of the hand cart. And they and I think it also, it leads you through the storyline a little bit more straightforward, because we're still spending time with Pazzi.
Yeah.
In Fuller's version of it, it becomes a Bedelia moment, and it becomes a thing there where you're concerned about her storyline and how she fits in and how do I get out of here? How do I get, and so we didn't have that whole thing of Pazzi knows that he's going to do this thing, and he's made this choice, and he's trying to figure out how to do it, and he screws up with with the phone. And it's like he's sweating bullets. And the whole time that I love the way he's telling the lecture, and I like the choices that they made in talking about the Pazzi storyline.
Oh, yeah.
They really didn't get into that as much in the TV show, and they didn't quite show all the images. And we didn't quite like the
wood carving.
Yeah. But they show this close up of the hanging figure,
and it's horrifying. Like the way that art was done. That's one of the most memorable images from this film, is that sudden switch to the close up of that piece of art.
Yeah.
And so I was just sort of disappointed when it's just like, hey, here's a little wood carving. You like it?
Yeah, exactly. This just had so much more weight, and it was like, we know this is going to happen, so that when it happens and we see everything happen the way he's just talked about, I just think it's a lot. It makes more sense in the advancement of the storyline, where we were trying to put in so many things in the TV show and have other characters in there that I think it took away from the whole Pazzi storyline. And that's one of the things we don't like about that, where lots of things don't make sense. It's like, no, he has this family and he has this story, and how, he's eviscerated and hung from the gallows. And here is Pazzi, who is going to betray his house, and he's going to do, and the way it's up there. And I liked Hopkins' delivery. I don't know why it didn't seem to bother. I like the cadence of his voice and the whole thing that I love about the way Lecter speaks, and just, I make my home, be my gallows. I really liked the way all that was done. And when he, he talks about, though he is hanging still, and he puts that heavy hand on Pazzi's shoulder, which is, we've seen this in the TV show. Yeah. The whole thing. He does it on Will, and he does it to Bedelia. In that scene. So it's great because it's that, though, as it's punctuated with that, and how unnerving it is to Pazzi. I think while it doesn't heavily go towards it, I think I like this one a lot better.
So it's going to be a tie game here because I'm definitely on Team Mass for this one, for many of the same reasons that you prefer the Hannibal one. But for me, this is the film version.
Yeah, this episode makes it
this one's hard.
It makes it challenging. Yeah, it's a film versus a TV show, so they have so much more time to set it up, but they have much less time to give it, and so. I don't know the runtimes. I don't have the runtimes in front of me here, but it feels like what we get in the show is a longer scene. We get more time with it because they have more time to give. And I like that at least I remember seeing more of the presentation, seeing more of the discussion, seeing more slides. You like the shadows. I like that I can actually see the images in the projection, and it feels, I liked the costume symbolism of Hannibal's face superimposed with the devil, and then Bedelia is in all white with her flowing hair, being a terrified angel, facing off against this devil. So I really enjoyed that imagery as well. I like that. With the film version, I feel like, yes, we're getting everything with Pazzi, but we already know what that is. There's nothing surprising. It's just there. Yes, there's the sense of doom and the dramatic irony of you're gonna die. And it is watching Hannibal enjoy that and toy with Pazzi is interesting and fun. But I'm much more engaged by what is going on, and Hannibal not knowing what Bedelia is up to. So rather than it being Hannibal luxuriating in what he knows he will be doing to Pazzi later, we get to watch Hannibal speaking on this topic and doing it so well, so expertly, while uncertain and thrown off his game by thinking he's got everything sewn up, and then being surprised. Hannibal is so rarely surprised. So I really enjoy that as well. And I like the wood carving that we get later because I like the tactile nature of it. For me in this, yes, it is very dramatic when we get the zoom in of the art, but it also feels, it's like, really, you zoom in and it's that crystal clear, and it's like, and his name is right next to it. Like, maybe that is in the actual thing. Sure, but I like the sense of him handling this thing that's been carved by hand that has all these hours put into it, rather than just what looks like a wood, like just like one corner of a larger work. I like that it was like a specific, here's something that was crafted just about your ancestor. So I have a feeling, Cooper, you're up next, but I have a feeling we're going to have a split.
No, but what's interesting is we all sort of built on each other's opinions, and the fact that the part of the point of Pazzi's death, both this Pazzi and that Pazzi, is how it was inconsequential. And so to have that Pazzi be hanging as part of a much larger painting, and he's just over here, and it's like a political cartoon. We've labeled him to be helpful, but he's worthless. It's pointless. And so the wood carving, it adds a thing to it. It's like
there's more of a connection.
Yeah, but the transition from Hannibal's talking about, we should go out for a drink, and then Pazzi's on the phone to tell him, okay, he's in here, and Hannibal's just like, oh, you know what? I should have shown this one.
Yeah.
Click. And it's like he was prepared specifically at this event for the eventuality of this. And if he wasn't prepared specifically for this, he was prepared to just humiliate Pazzi a little bit. Just 'cause. just because he can. But what I love about this is Pazzi is coming to this speech moments after having talked to Clarice about how dangerous Hannibal Lecter is, knowing that the wheels are so far in motion, he has to go forward, and so shaken that he left his gun at the police station.
I wrote that down too. It's like gun left behind. Really?
But I come down to if I think what our listener really wanted is the actual performances, and I think this is one of the rare occasions that Anthony Hopkins is much better than Mass. And one of the things that this viewing of Hannibal surprised me on is, especially after Red Dragon, because I was always feeling that, he had Silence of the Lambs, which was tone perfect. He went bigger with Hannibal, which sometimes is really solid. And then he drew it back in for Red Dragon. And watching them again, so quick succession, I realized he didn't really draw it in for Red Dragon.
No.
He's way overblown in Red Dragon. And he's far subtler in this movie, except for like 4 moments. And the I'm giving very careful thought to eating your wife. That's way over the top.
Yeah.
But it's over the top because Lecter wants to be over the top in this moment. And when he surprises the Carlo's brother with the knife, and he's all, like all vampire on him, that's over the top. But in general, especially in this sequence, in a number of, like at the library when he's standing in the shadows, he's very subtle. And in the dinner sequence, which we'll obviously talk about, he's extremely subtle, which was almost surprisingly so.
Definitely for me, because one of the few things I had heard so much about, and part of why I had zero interest in watching it, so now I'm glad that I have, is that everybody said he's always like cackling over the top villain, and he's not at all.
No, he's not. No.
It's a good performance.
He is compared to Mads Mikkelsen.
At times, but other times, Mass is super over the top comparatively.
that's true.
It depends on where we are in the spectrum. Season 1, maybe, but parts of season 3.
Yeah. But I love that. I love the feeling of doom in this scene. And I think that's what really pushes me. Bedelia was in her nervous place. Like, she didn't know what was going on with him. He didn't know what was going on with her. But no one felt doomed. They felt poorly aligned. This was bad decision making here. But Pazzi is actually doomed. And we felt it from the moment he first interacted with Hannibal. So that sense is so palpable as we're hearing both the English translation and the Italian of Dante. And that Italian, then the way he's delivering it, he's orating, but he's not projecting. He goes inward. And that's what's so wonderful about Anthony Hopkins as Hannibal Lecter, is when he chooses to bring it inward rather than go up. It's like in the FBI.
Yeah.
He didn't go big. He went home, Yeah. And so we do have a split, which I expected nothing less, actually. But they're both wonderful. And it's one of the things that the comparison only makes the two both seem grander.
I think that's why I always have a hard time when I'm asked to compare. And I've been sort of like notorious over the many episodes that we've done whenever I'm confronted with which do you like better, or what do you...
You'll love our finale then.
Yeah, exactly. Where I'm like, always like, I don't... it's really hard for me sometimes, where I always feel like I'm like split down the middle. It's hard. I can't choose favorites because there is...
Which child do you like more?
Right. I love all my children equally.
Except for Red Dragon.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Well, and let's not speak too soon about Hannibal Rising.
Oh, that's right, because we haven't seen that
we
yet
have
at all.
been told, though, that based on our furiosity over Red Dragon, we will actually like Hannibal Rising.
Intriguing.
Yeah.
I can't wait.
I'm sufficiently...
I am skeptical.
I am skeptical, too.
But it is hard, because it's like, you love Mass, you love what Brian Fuller has done there. There's music. There's their own version of lighting, which is always exquisite.
Yeah.
On the TV show, amazingly exquisite for a TV show. So it is really hard, but it's like that's why I said it's only sort of a little bit more, because I feel sort of like I could go back and watch that one and then decide.
Well, and it serves such a different purpose in the narrative, because that's not the Pazzi scene. They haven't introduced Pazzi yet in the
that was
show.
in the first episode,
Which is the
right?
first episode of the season. That's an antipasto. And it just serves such a different purpose. And it's also so you have to go scene by scene. Yeah, but because I do also like that scene. What I don't like, though, and I'm curious your guys' thoughts. I'm on board through Okie Dokie. I'm on board through
Okie dokie.
all of that until he drops. I already mentioned it, until he drops Pazzi into a crowded, full square. Because that's for me. If you're gonna hold the Pazzi death scenes up side by side, what makes the TV series one infinitely better for me is that this is a thing that happens in the middle of the night, which feels much more in keeping with what Hannibal would actually do than what we get here. Because how is he it just makes him, again, I know he's super powerful,
He's magic.
Hannibal.
Hannibal is magic.
How is he
Just
getting
like My Little Pony?
out of the building?
Yeah.
And then out of the square, and then out of the town, and then out of the country after having done this? And yes, he can, because he's Hannibal, but it's so much less interesting. And I feel like Hannibal's the kind of person who, yes, he would like the shock moment of creating a splash of throwing the body over it, but I think he also would enjoy people finding the body in the morning, or just like waking up and there's this thing that happened and nobody even knows, it just appears. I feel like he would also enjoy that.
I think part of it, and it was this way in the book, and I think part of it is Hannibal is very myopic when it comes to certain things, and like Mason Verger, it would have been far more better to kill him.
Yeah.
And so the myopicness here is, not only should Pazzi die, not only should he be hung like his ancestors, but he should be sadly humiliated.
Yeah.
Because it is just another example of how Pazzi did the wrong thing at the wrong time, just like Il Mostro. And Hannibal is so wrapped up into okay, not only am I going to hang you, I'm going to disembowel you. Not only am I going to do that, I'm going to do that in front of this crowd of Japanese tourists. Not only am I going to do that, I'm going to wave to the cameras.
It's a lot of audacity in that. A lot,
And I think it may be chalked up to Hannibal being so overly confident in his abilities at this point. Like, he's hidden out and gotten his dream job in Italy. So he's so overly confident. It's like, well, why not? Let's see what they do. Yeah. And if I get caught, I probably deserve it.
Right. But it would be so worth it.
Yes.
You mentioned the Anthony Hopkins surprising Carlos with the knife.
Yeah, that would.
But we have to talk about how, in comparison, the Jack scene. I mean, that to me blows away.
That scene
the
is
Carlos
far better
scene.
than everything after Pazzi's death. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Pazzi, this is really
The
what it is.
next step is...
I think the Pazzi storyline, till it comes to a close, is nearly perfect in this film. And that's why I was so disappointed that it just felt sort of rushed and short and cheap in the TV series.
Yeah.
And so, but then immediately after that, it does become this other thing. Like when he stabs, what is the guy's name? That's not Carlo, the other guy.
Oh, his brother?
Yeah. When he stabs him, he flies across the room. All he did was cut him.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. I
crashes through some chairs.
Oh, before
Hannibal is magic. There's no physics involved.
Yeah,
before we move on to that, I want to add with the death of Pazzi that talk about how he is fascinated or sort of obsessed with the story. I thought the reason why he chose to do it in a crowded square is that he was recreating the original moment.
Yeah.
And it was a public execution.
It was a public execution. Yeah.
So that's why when it was in a in the middle of the night and nobody could see it, I was a little disappointed because the theatrical quality of Hannibal and how obsessed he is with all these things with churches collapsing and all this history, that he is so sort of ridiculously detail oriented that he's, the devil is in the details. That he would want to recreate it so much
as close as possible.
That it's like not only, do I get to do this thing where I get to kill him the way his ancestors killed, but it's a public execution and that humiliation and all of that. That it's like, no, this is I've recreated this to perfection.
He thinks he's doing the Questura a favor.
Yes.
By wrapping it up. We also by jumping forward, we missed the major change from the film and the TV series, which is the I'm giving very serious thought to eating your wife.
Eating your wife. Yeah.
And I don't feel that the equivalent works at all in the series.
Oh, I think it does. I think that subtext is there, absolutely.
But why not say it?
You don't even need to. It's much more powerful if you don't. It gives the benefit of the doubt to Pazzi. It lets Pazzi, instead of having Pazzi, I'll capitulate because you've threatened my wife, it has Pazzi's think, I better just get this done or else he will. I know Hannibal Lecter enough to know he will go after. I just want him to be happy and to let's have him kill me quickly. I mean, for me, that subtext was, and not having seen the film, not having read the books, just watching the show, that subtext was 100% there for me.
Okay.
I guess because we knew it from the books and from the movies, it was hard for us to.
Couldn't see it. It's it's just.
It was really hard for us.
Well, and of course on the show, she didn't have a name. She had 2 scenes.
She didn't have a name. Yeah.
So Maestro did her best, but
another thing that stood out was the way Hannibal has to climb down to escape, climbing down.
Yeah.
Climbing down the corpse.
The corpse.
Yeah.
Shot through the gut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he talks to Clarice for the first time because his phone is ringing, and I love the way Hannibal pulls his phone out of his pocket by the antenna and sort of just holds it up like, "Oh, shall I answer it?"
Yeah,
like it's a dead rat that he's holding.
Pronto.
And there's nothing in this world I'd love more than to be able to chat with you. Unfortunately, you've caught me at an awkward moment. He whistles "Rockabye Baby" as he's pulling Pazzi up to the door.
It's so disturbingly playful. Like, here we go.
Okie dokie.
Hold on.
Okey-dokey.
Yeah. And I wrote that.
And then
whistling
the vowels in or
Rockabye
out.
Baby.
Vowels in or out like Judas, shall we? Or would you like me to make that choice?
Yes.
I think what's really stood out in the difference in these two performances is Mass never really struck me as genial.
Interesting.
And
he does to me at times.
And this isn't genial Hannibal Lecter, obviously. He's doing horrible things, but he's pretending to be genial. And so when they did this scene in the show, it sort of felt really odd because Mass doesn't usually behave that way as Hannibal.
It's interesting. Like I even remember back in season 1 when he tries to get Franklin to leave before he kills Tobias. Like even just moments like that, seeing like a gesture of kindness or congenial, geniality, if you want to use that term, in Mass's we're buddies, Mass and I, and Mickelson's performance. And so I mean I do see that in there.
Okay.
But or I mean he just is so obsessed with control, it's hard to find that sometimes where because to be truly genial you can't be trying to control everything,
right?
Because then it's forced. There's an extra layer of manipulation to everything. But there have been moments here and there, like in conversations with Jack, in conversations especially with Bella. I don't know how you could say it, his conversation with Bella, or pretty much anything other than that, because he's almost always completely respectful of her.
I think I may have said it wrong. It's not. Let's say jovial.
Jovial.
not genial.
Yeah, and I also see
Okay.
that in Mickelson's though.
The playfulness of
Yeah.
Yeah.
a light-hearted way of speaking.
Yeah. Once they know and he knows that they know, I think we get a lot more of that.
Sure. Definitely.
And before that, even you could say when that conversation about the sliced the ginger sliced thin and the long
Sliced the
pig.
ginger.
Yeah, and when he's with but when we have Hannibal and Will able to interact more truthfully, theoretically, I also kind of see it there sometimes. But I see what you're saying.
So now we get into the more Mason Verger heavy portion of the film, where he's involved in the machinations. Now, I don't really understand why first Verger saved her career and now has to destroy it. It seems like another concession to a book that went into far more detail of what was actually going on. But I do love Mason Verger wearing the Lecter mask while saying things like, does Lecter want to fuck her or kill her or eat her or what?
What?
And it's so funny because he's wearing it and he's enjoying it, and then he's just like, no, take it, take this
the
off.
damn thing off of me. Yeah, that he can't breathe in it.
Yeah. And we get that great line, when the fox sees the rabbit scream, he comes running, but not to help.
Yeah, he comes a running.
Yeah,
It's so disjointed.
it is.
It's just, and now we need our two plot threads to converge. So completely new idea, completely new element. This is where it loses me. As much as I like certain elements of what we get through here, but it's just,
It feels disturbingly like a first draft.
yeah. It's
that
lacking
hasn't-
structure.
Yeah. Because Clarice is put on administrative leave, and she tries real hard to steer them in the direction of what's actually going on with Krendler, but apparently it's one of those things. Well, there's corruption everywhere. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, fine.
Yeah, in the book they go into more detail of Krendler's involvement with Verger.
Right.
So when all of this stuff goes down, it makes a little bit more sense. But it seems like in the movie, it just pops up like 3/4 of the way through the movie.
But we do get that great thing where Krendler, first of all, he's dressed in his tennis white.
Yes.
And he says, it'll cost you $5. And Verger goes, just toss it off like $5.
Yes.
And that's the scene where I think Mason Verger looks like Michael Jackson. Because he's wearing his hat down low and his hair is all scraggly and he's got his big
His
sunglasses
glasses
on. I realize that's not very nice.
Send him.
And I apologize to the dearly departed Michael Jackson.
Michael Jackson.
Too soon.
While he's out on his porch.
Do you think Clarice getting fired would be press conference worthy?
I thought that was
No.
odd too.
That's
yeah.
weird.
Not at
Okay.
all.
Yeah.
Unless, I
Nope.
mean, yeah, because the news agencies wouldn't care.
Yeah, I totally
Honestly,
wrote
the news
down-
agencies don't care about the FBI at all.
At
They
all.
care about the killer.
Yeah.
That's what the news wants to deliver. They want to deliver what's the killer doing today. They don't go into the
Right.
person who caught them. They don't go into there's no fame
Yeah.
in
thought
law
that-
enforcement.
It's all about Lecter. No one cares
Yeah.
about Clarice.
Yeah.
That makes sense. When Hannibal breaks into Krendler's house and scares the dog away, so this is supernatural Hannibal,
Yes.
which shows up again when the pigs won't touch him.
Mm-hmm.
This is the Hannibal Lecter that Thomas Harris thinks is the devil.
I can see that.
But Hannibal could not be more conspicuous wearing that Panama hat as he breaks into Krendler's house. I did like how the dog is whining and barking, but not doing anything.
But not doing anything.
And it's clearly like trying to do its duty there,
It's
but
like
it's actually frightened.
He's cast a spell, and
Yeah.
like it felt like he was a wizard at that point. He's just like, now
You're
now
a wizard,
sleep.
Hannibal.
Now sleep.
I was totally fine with it. Totally fine with it. For me, it's the dog recognizing there's something wrong with this guy.
There's a predator in the
There's
house.
a predator.
Yeah.
It's a threat, and I can't just being like, I want to attack. That's my instinct, and or a bark, or
out of my league.
but this is I don't know what this is. This is something other. This is not like there's an intruder in the house. There's something else entirely. And even just like he smells different than people. He just gives off a different aura, or just I don't what you want to call it, but just the way that like. When there's like going to be an earthquake, cows it down because they can sense the barometric pressure. Like just being like there's an otherness. This is not just a person because it doesn't move like a person. It doesn't sound like a person. It is too like this is something else. And I know it's not good, but I don't know how to respond to it. So like for me, that really worked.
Okay. We do get that beautiful shopping montage where we get the reprise of Vita Cormium. And then we get Lecter stealing just walking in like he owns the hospital, taking the lab coat, locking that poor guy in the freezer.
Yes.
And
nonchalantly.
It's this beautiful thing because you see him how Lecter would shop. He's picking out china. He buys a clock.
Yes.
To create the right ambience.
It made me think of Red Dragon. Was that supposed to make me think of Red Dragon? The clock in the hallway?
The clock on the wall.
It made me think of Red Dragon also.
I have to laugh. I realized I rose. He goes shopping.
Shopping.
It's like a stand-up comedian does a whole thing about not understanding women. They talk about, are you going shopping? I'm not going shopping. I'm just going shopping.
The difference between shopping because you want to shop and shopping because you need things.
Yeah, it's a difference between going and spending money and actually like going and buying things,
like or running to the store because you need milk, or
I got to go like wander around the department store looking at stuff but not really buying anything.
I need to buy. As a musician, I need to buy a floor-length black skirt, but it has to be fit within these 5 parameters, and I have to have closed-toed black shoes for this performance, but they can't have heels because I'm not allowed to.
You're on a mission for specific things.
It's going to take for.
I'm going to kill some time and just look at stuff, and it's become like a long-standing joke now between my husband and I. It's like, are you going shopping? Or are you going shopping? And the fact that he was so like taking things and it was so deliberate and putting everything together is like, Hannibal goes shopping.
Yeah, catch the light. Yeah.
I wish we had not gotten the shallow/deep rollers conversation earlier in the film because it would have been so much more impactful if the first time we'd heard it was in this scene where Clarice is breaking down, where she takes her stuff home from the office and is cleaning her kitchen while listening to this. And then the disturbing Lecter visit while she's asleep, where he leaves the rose that they don't focus on at all. Like there is a rose there, and it's like half on frame.
Yeah.
And then the Gucci ad with her face, and it's this great moment when he has to touch her, when he just reaches forward and just a touch, I don't understand the phone batteries thing at all. These two explained it to me. I don't get what's going on in that. There's a phone battery on a charger. What cell phones charge a phone outside the phone? What batteries are charged outside the phone?
Yeah, a lot of it. It is not a great idea.
No.
Because usually when you take a battery out of a phone, the phone turns off anyway.
Right.
So she would have lost the signal with him.
And can't she just try to make the trace when she puts the battery back in? Like I don't know what he's doing there.
Yeah.
I think the difference is between him calling her and her calling him.
Does she call him
the second time?
Are you sure? We don't see them.
We don't see. No. We just it does connect, but we don't really see how.
I like things about this sequence. I don't like Hannibal Lecter in a short sleeve shirt and a baseball cap. I really don't. It doesn't feel right. It looks weird. Just like Hannibal Lecter with the short hair. I don't like it. It looks weird. But the sequence with the at Union Station with the carousel and especially that ghostly swipe by, and the things Hannibal is saying are great. Is how he's talking about how the Bureau serves order and they throw you away and she feels like it's her duty to protect the sheep, which is a great silence callback. How did this work for you guys?
Totally worked.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very good. Like I said, 2/3 of a very good movie for me.
Yeah.
Totally. And the photo booth, I can't think of anything but Amelie and how the big reveal in the Amelie is the photo booth there.
It was so nice for that to not be a head.
What's in the box?
What's in the box?
Just some nice shoes for you. Finally,
Yeah.
Again, paying off
little present.
silence,
Yeah.
and her cheap shoes.
Exactly.
Yeah. There's a lot of abbreviation here. Like, she goes to the bureau, they don't believe her. The cops go to the Verger estate and immediately leave. It's clear that they're wanting to tell a more expansive story, but don't quite know how to pare it down effectively. Mm-hmm. So they're just putting everything in these little flashes. I also don't like I don't know what it is. It's seeing Lecter captured and tased like a normal person is weird for me.
Uh-huh.
Like when he goes down, it's like, really? Just one little tase, take out Hannibal Lecter? That seems odd. Or when they punch him and he's all bleeding, it's like, huh?
Like,
really? Okay.
Where's your magic?
He can be hurt by mere mortals? And it's funny because that goes in conflict with my feelings that Hannibal Lecter shouldn't be supernatural. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, it's like, but he sort of is.
His superpower is not getting caught.
Well, yes, that is.
If he gets caught, then he's just, that all falls away. But
I mean, electricity, that's...
Okay, yeah, that's true.
That's going to do it.
Don't fuck with electricity.
Nope.
We get the Blue Danube again.
Yeah.
Which played in the Mason Verger flashback.
I also think that they probably would have used a hyper-powered taser, like something
to make sure he
something
goes
they
down.
Modified to be more like a cattle prod type thing.
That could be. And they do work with those giant pigs, so they may have to.
They may have had to put one of those things down.
Mason talking about the pig's teeth to help Hannibal identify what is going to happen to him, while doing that little victory lap around Hannibal.
Oh my god,
that's great.
Dinners at 8.
Yeah, but I wish now I bet you wish now you'd fed the rest of me to the dogs. No, Mason, I much prefer you the way you are.
Yes.
And here's the conflict. The whole conflict between Cordell and Mason is Cordell doesn't want to stay. Mm-hmm. Mason tells him he's gotta.
Yeah, it really did not seem like this. Really, we talk about 2/3 of it.
Yeah,
this is when it sort of
it goes off the rails.
Yeah, it's unsatisfying. It seems disjointed and rushed and not very well thought out. And it's sort of like, okay, we got to wrap this up. Yeah,
but you can't leave. Why? Because in the script, there's brothers. We'll fill this in later. They just forgot to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But when Clarice arrives here, it moves so quickly and weirdly. I do like the do right and you'll live through this, spoken like a true Protestant. That's a great little bit. And Clarice is taking charge again, and it is great to see her in control of a situation until she's not in control of the situation.
Yes.
And then it's just
she gets Giles'd.
She does.
Hardcore Giles.
Totally. Pass out, and then everything gets
bonk
resolved.
On the head, and then, Could they have just ended it after the farm? Did they need to go and cook Krenler's head?
So you're not a fan of the dinner scene, then?
Not enough because the whole scene is just because of the way that whole thing plays out. No, I'm not. I don't think that we need it. I don't know that it would work to not have anything, but I think we certainly don't need to have a drugged up Clarice. Just let's watch her be unable. Let's watch Hannibal be in control of her. For the last 10 minutes, 15 minutes of the film. And again, because this is not the culmination of anything, any arc for her or any change in Hannibal at all, do we need that? Could it have been an arc of she has to catch Hannibal, she's got some unresolved issues of not going after him previously that then resolves in the climax is when she releases him, and then she is culpable for all the deaths at the farm. Like that would that have been enough? I mean, what do you guys think of all of that? Does that resolve anything or no?
Scene, actually.
Okay.
And because this sequence is so abbreviated and weird, and Mason's death is so out of left field, and I guess, okay, I mean, I would have much preferred Hannibal to kill Mason than Cordell, because it's weird that Cordell does.
Yeah.
Where
motivation
and Hannibal doing exactly what Mason wanted to do to him to Mason. There's some poetry in that. I could have gotten on board with that. I am a huge fan of the dinner scene, but I don't like the way it's rushed. I don't like the weird timing of it. I feel like it could have been more impressive.
Could you have skipped this and gone straight to that then?
I would have preferred that. I really don't like this end to the Mason Verger storyline at all.
Neither do I.
It's unsatisfying.
Yeah.
And
Just makes you want to watch the show because it's so much better on the show.
It is,
Exactly.
yes.
and
yes.
it's unsatisfying.
the closest
and it's,
to what I wanted to see on the show.
It's a climax that doesn't belong either. It's that's not the climax of the film.
No.
I mean, okay, let's talk. Was Mason's death effective for anyone?
No, very anticlimactic.
Okay.
I didn't care about him at all through the film.
True. Yeah.
So it was hard to care about his death because he was a terrible person.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, it was sort of just a thing that happened. And I mean, we haven't really said this, but those boars were freaking huge. Those are creepy and scary.
Yeah.
Like, that was,
Terrifying.
if you're going to do that, that's the way to do it. But other than that, no. It just made me think, again, of how much better done it was on the show.
Right.
I agree. Yeah.
Very much so.
But yeah, let's talk about this climax. So Clarice gets hit and goes out. We do get that great shot of Hannibal carrying her. That's like Frankenstein and his bride. But it is Hannibal taking charge of ostensibly the hero of the film. And you can see why Jodie Foster didn't like this direction at all. But I think a lot of it comes down to this is the best that Ray Liotta is in the whole film.
That is true.
This performance, this weird hazy performance where and like when he gets all excited, like, did you hear the job interview? I snuck into the blessing.
Yeah.
It's so odd. And Anthony Hopkins is at his best in this scene, in the whole film. His downplayed nature and the even the scene that follows too, you just had to look into a mirror to see that. I really love this sequence, and I loved it in the book. It is different than in the book, but not a lot different. There was no time crunch in the book because the FBI wasn't coming.
Yeah.
Because this is the beginning of their flight from the law. But it's so absurd and so theatrical and so grand guignol. I love that element of it. So that's why I'm on board fully with this scene.
I think it just wasn't built to enough for me because, again, it's that lack of a spine to the film. Of if Krenler,
Yeah,
Krenler.
Paul
Krenler was the villain of the piece, or at least for like much more.
He is more the villain than Hannibal. I
He's
think.
more the villain than Hannibal. But if he was an interesting, fully developed character, an interesting character that I was invested in, if I loved to hate him rather than just thought he was a putz and one dimensional character in the extreme, then I could be more invested in what goes down at the dinner. But because the entire dinner is Hannibal entirely in control, and there's no suspense for me. There's no yes, it's good performances, and yes, I guess there's some is Clarice going to be able to overcome anything? But I also know that she's not, because I'm pretty sure that Hannibal's going to escape. Because I went into the film knowing that. If I hadn't gone into the film knowing that, maybe it would have been more interesting to me. But yeah, it for me, it's just this extended sequence of the time crunch helps, I guess, but of knowing that Clarice wants to try to help, but is not going to be able to. And I don't care what happens to Ray Liotta. I'm just going to call him Ray Liotta. I don't And I know Hannibal is in complete control, and there's no one who can stop or surprise or anything him. So for me, there's no suspense. And
until Clarice cuffs him. Which you get the sense he did not
see that coming.
Close to see that. The way he looks at that cuff, it's
I
just
didn't
like,
see that coming.
well, that's interesting.
But he can't pick a lock.
Quickly?
Well, he
I don't
has
know.
picked a lot.
That's true.
He's picked the handcuffs, and
Yeah.
I think Clarice might go like this.
Okay, he can knock her out.
Okay, good point.
But I mean, like,
I don't like the whole cutting off his hand.
Yeah.
That would make it so hard for him to leave the country.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's just, so I should like it more than I do. And I think the reason that I don't like it enough is because of these other issues with the rest of the film and the fact that it does not feel like a culmination of anything. And we haven't seen Hannibal and Clarice really interact that much through the film to have their relationship be something that's in flux. But it doesn't lead to anywhere, it doesn't build to anywhere, so we can't have a payoff of their relationship changing or of any person changing. So that's why for me it's not a satisfying sequence.
How about you two?
It's kind of interesting because the more I think about it, because I am dissatisfied with the end of this film. I hadn't really thought about how disjointed everything is from the dinner scene going into the kitchen. And there were things that I'm sort of like wasn't ready to fully get on board with, but I couldn't quite figure out what it was. And I think why there's a part of me that likes the dinner scene is very similar to why Cooper likes it, the Grand Queen. It's like the moment where it becomes a horror movie.
Yeah.
And being a horror movie buff, it's sort of like that of the uncomfortableness of it and the whole just horrifying idea of eating somebody's brains while they are still alive and are semi-conscious and talking to you in the room. Really, there are a few things as gruesome as that. So I'm attracted to that scene, not because it makes any freaking sense in the movie.
No, and it doesn't.
Because it really doesn't. It's just sort of like that scene, the way it's lit with the deep red light and the sort of way Krendler sort of is in and out of consciousness, and he's still a dick because I had plans for that smart mouth that's so ingrained in him that he can't
and
stop
even
doing
in the prayer when he says
the job interview it's something else,
even forgive us all, even white trash like Starling.
Exactly, that's but then when Hannibal leaves and takes the wheelchair and they go and he's like, oh, we're gonna go make my coffee, and as they're going
Paul
through the door,
clear the table.
Paul, Krendler goes coffee, like echoes his coffee and then waves as they go through the door. I think as a scene, as a horrific sort of with a little bit of humor that makes it uncomfortable, I like that. But you're right, it doesn't make sense really when we go from the Mason Verger scene, we go to this. What are we wrapping up? Really?
Yeah.
Other than the fact that she's been trying to find him, we really didn't go into very deeply that he's into unusual foods and how he eats things. We haven't had an experience like we've done in the Hannibal TV series where we've talked about how, like we've gone in this movie about his particular taste. We kind of...
The only mention of Hannibal's cannibalism in this movie is the Benjamin Raspail he was fed as sweetbreads. That's it.
Exactly.
I never actually realized that there is so little, and the eating your wife, but that's nothing.
That's nothing. Yeah, compared to how much it's talked about and put on display in silence. Mm-hmm. They because they've focused on so many other things. When we get to this, it's kind of interesting. Like, okay, how did we get here? But it seems more to me of like, well, we have to remember that it's Hannibal the cannibal,
right? And
we have to have this scene because we need to see this other. It's like a fan thing. We need to do this thing. We need to make it interesting. We need to make it gruesome. But then when we go into the scene in the kitchen, again, I'm sort of like, So here we are. They finally meet up, and they're at this fight. And I thought it was actually kind of cool that he puts her ponytail.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then like rips off the handle.
That's
So
Hannibal
she's-
knowing how to use his environment.
Yes, exactly. But I was like, when she handcuffs him, and then they go, this is really gonna hurt. And then they go to black, and then she's walking along the river, and it's like, oh, okay, she has both hands. Well, now we know who doesn't have a hand. Then I'm like,
He doesn't have a hand?
yeah, what? So how did he leave? That's a lot of blood loss. How did he get on the plane?
How is there not a flight warning? Look out for
Or handless
one-handed-
one-handed gourmand.
Yeah, the one-armed man. I don't know. Yeah, it becomes very clumsy and very sort of quick. And so I think the last time
Pay no attention to that lack of writing.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, no, I have a hand.
And even though when he takes out the Dean and DeLuca box,
Yeah.
and there's that little Tupperware of brains in there, everything, I think, from basically the end of Mason Verger to the end of the movie, if there are moments that I like, it has nothing to do with furthering the plot or tying up the loose ends or having any kind of coherent ending to this film, because it totally does not.
Yeah.
But I just love the moments in of themselves. I like him with the little kid that is interested in what he's eating, because he's not eating airplane food.
Yeah, no, you never should. It's not even food.
It's not even food
as
I know it. And it's as my mother used to say, it's good to try new things. And there's that horrifying idea that kid's eating Krendler's brains. Like your brain wants to scream at the thought of this little kid like eating this thing.
Yeah.
So it's a horror movie fan like yay moment. Does nothing for the ending of this film in any way, shape, or form.
How about you, Ophelia?
I have a hard time with him cutting off his hand, because I feel like Hannibal, when it would come down to a moment like that, self-preservation would win over whatever fascination or obsession he has with
I agree.
Clarice.
Yeah.
And so I have a hard time getting into the mindset that that's what he would do.
Yeah.
And the dinner scene, it's sort of right up his alley. It's definitely something that I could imagine him doing. And I feel like we get a lot of that sort of that over romanticized part that doesn't sit well with us from the book in this ending.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it doesn't feel true to character for really any of them.
It feels like you're supposed to think, oh, he loves her.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, right. Like, yeah. The KISS. Hannibal and Clarice.
So nobody's
sitting in a
on
tree.
board with the kiss, though, right?
Oh no,
No.
not at all. Absolutely not. I could see him kissing her hand before he cuts it off. I could
Yeah.
see that.
Yeah.
But not her face. No, I don't.
Kissed her face.
Or maybe forehead, kind of like a kid thing, like, "Oh, you're so sweet. I'm sorry I have to cut your hand off."
Yeah.
But I guess it is a little comical, the dinner scene. It does it I think it's always felt that way. I think as you guys were talking, I started having like images of ways that this could have been done differently that may have been a little bit more acceptable, I guess. And no, that's not the right word that I'm looking for. But if we had seen everything through a drug haze, where it was kind of like a spinning room, maybe, that we're seeing it from Clarice's perspective, but we get bits of something happening to Krendler and some part of him being cooked, or like, that like little flashes or blurbs of it, like where her memory is muddled or something. But to have it be like, okay, we're going to say grace and sit down and have a meal together, and we're all going to get dressed up all fancy like and have a proper dinner, or like one of Hannibal's fancy dinner parties. It felt, I guess it felt sort of to call back to what you were saying, it was very horror movie-ish and did not blend. But I guess if they really had to put it in there that he was going to eat Krendler's brain, maybe just not this way. I don't know. Like, I don't have a problem with him eating Krendler's brain at all, or cutting open his head and having a conversation with him while he's, feeding him the brains and feeding him the broth to make him taste better, blah, blah, blah. I don't have a problem with that. I just don't think I would have staged it like this. Like, I think it should have been, I don't know. I can't really say it should have been anything because I have no experience in making movies or setting up scenes. But if it hadn't been so blatantly obvious, maybe it would have been a little bit more easy to swallow, I guess. But I do love the airplane with a little boy in the box.
That's a great ending.
Yeah.
That was a great scene. I like that. I don't know if I necessarily like the overall ending, but that was a great scene.
I will say there's a lot of little details in this scene that I really do like in both of these, the kitchen and the dining room scenes. I love Krendler saying that smells great and being fed his brain. Is just, that's Tales from the Crypt level of humorous horror. But Anthony Hopkins and the given the chance you would deny me my life, wouldn't you? Not your life, my freedom, just that. You'd take it from me. I think he's tremendous here. And when he talks about would the FBI let you go back if you caught me? Would that do it? Would you get a medal to see that you are the incorruptible Clarice Starling? And this is his finest portion of the film, and unfortunately, it's in a scene that doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
while cops are taking an epic long time to get there, driving through sunset, and it's on the 4th of July for no reason.
Well, it's on the 4th of July, so we can continue Silence of the Lambs. Patriotism.
Oh, that's true. There's a lot of patriotism, and
it's all that. And I feel like it's completely tacked on in Silence of the Lambs and not actually thought about in any way. Just sort of like, let's frame a flag in the light after we've shot Buffalo Bill. And then here, when he's like, by the way, let's make sure to mention it's the 4th of July so we can connect to that thread in silence. And we're also not going to think about it at all, or we're just going to
throw some fireworks
at the end.
Yeah. I'm just like, I guess it's there so we can have fireworks. But like, what is with that obsession?
Yeah, I don't get the fireworks at all.
The American flag imagery, and it's like, it doesn't feel like they're making a statement. I'm like, maybe man eating man in capitalism, but you have to really stretch it.
Well, maybe that's why their journey took so long. Traffic can be terrible on the 4th of July.
Absolutely. Everyone's
Holiday
pulling
traffic.
Over because there's fireworks happening.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. I mean, it's one of those things where you could have just removed that line from Krendler and removed the fireworks and not had to shoot that.
I know.
Because those were actual fireworks.
Yeah.
That are expensive.
Yeah.
But we did get another reprise of Vide Cormium for the
they
closing
used
credits.
the heck out of that.
We paid for it. We're going to use it.
We paid for it, and it sounds awesome. Yeah.
Perhaps the best part of the film, right there, hands down. I mean, it's a beautifully shot film at times. It's a wonderfully well written film at times. It's a brilliantly performed film at times. And then the times when it's not firing, it's just like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What is going on here? And I feel like that's almost entirely Thomas Harris's fault. Because they were trying to be faithful to his novel.
That's their fault.
Yeah, okay.
They're adapting his work, but that also shows that they didn't trust their own writing, their own judgment on it. I mean, it's like
to look at it and see what the weaknesses are and go, oh hell no, we're not going to use that. We're just going to have to do something different.
Yeah, Jodie Foster read it and said, no fucking way.
Yeah.
Ridley Scott is a very talented director. He should have been able to look at this and say, we've got third act problems that need to be resolved.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that is surprising.
Similar issues in Prometheus.
Oh,
I skipped that one. Felt confident about that choice.
Yeah.
But yeah, just he should have known better. And I would have thought that the other writers should have known better too.
Yeah. And it could have been a multitude of things of just at the time, you have so much hanging on you because of silence. So a lot of it may have been like, of what we keep saying over and over and over again is that there's a lot of fan service and there's a lot of, well, the audience is going to expect this. And I wonder if that's what really derails the end is no, we have to have a real cannibal scene and we have to do this and we have to without thinking about whether or not it's linear or it makes sense or it's going to give you a satisfying ending.
Sure.
It becomes more of a, hey, can we stick in all that cool stuff that people are going to want to see, which is such an odd choice for Ridley Scott because I don't really think of him as a director who does that. He usually is the innovator as opposed to someone who goes for sort of obvious ways of sort of pandering to the audience. But that being said, at least like I said, there is so much of this that is shot very, very well, and you take us with silence in beautiful coverage, beautiful editing, having things make sense. The stuff that's weak is script. They paring down Clarice, making interesting choices at the end.
Interesting. How magnanimous of you.
I know. I'm sorry, I'm not attacking their choices.
They were more interested in making a Hannibal movie than making a good movie.
Oh yeah, totally. And that's really
that's
what it boils down to is what I'm trying to say is that it's like, no, silence was this and it was Hannibal. And they took a book that was about Clarice, but they tried to use and it could have been strong arming from the studio. It could have been no. What's going to put the butts in the seats is Hannibal. And you don't know how much struggle there went in. That could have totally screwed up this whole ending. That might have been something different. No, we need more Hannibal. Yeah, and
he must eat someone.
Right, exactly. To try to, because that's usually why you keep going back to the well and why you get, 7 or 8 or 9 of a certain thing that is so awful. When you start getting into like Halloween and the Jason movies, like Friday the 13th it's not even Friday the 13th by the time we get to like the 10th film. It's like, it's so odd because it's just like, no, people want this and we're just going to throw this out there whether or not it makes any sense.
Right.
And I think that is the crux of this movie's difficulties. But that being said, at least there was a competent director and a competent cinematographer, and the change in the actors still had tremendous performances. Julianne Moore rises above an undercut character for a stunning performance. And I even said this at the end of the movie. It's like, it made me hate Red Dragon even more. Because I felt like you had all the tools and you had the well to draw from, and you still couldn't
failed.
make a good movie out of this. I still think this is more enjoyable. It's nicer to look at, and you get a lot of really good moments with these actors that we were more forgiving of the fan pandering of it.
Ophelia, final thoughts?
I think pretty much I agree with the last third or so of this movie falls apart, and it has a sort of unsatisfying end. I do think there were a lot of really great performances and a lot of things they did really, really well. Great shots, great sets that they chose to go with, and definitely better than Red Dragon, better than Manhunter, not as good as Silence.
That's my ranking too. I stand by my whole Hannibal is better than Manhunter.
But
agreed.
Yeah. Excellent. Huzzah. Huzzah.
It is disappointing when you know the source material and you can get excited about what somebody's vision is going to be of that source material, and then they miss that mark.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
It's in reading the books, it's like, okay, all right, I can go along with how you're going to portray these characters. I can disagree with you, and I really hope that another fan of your books can improve upon it and take out the stuff that I thought was BS and recreate it in a way that is more cohesive. But I don't think that they did that with
I
this.
don't think so either.
Yeah.
I don't think I have anything left to say. I think y'all pretty much said it. And I've been just kind of hitting the same beats for this whole podcast. Again, I'm very pleased to discover 2/3 of a very good movie, which I would not have seen. And I'm also glad to have corrected some false perceptions I had of this, and also of Anthony Hopkins, and also Julianne Moore. And it's a shame it's not what it could have been.
Yeah.
But there's still a lot of fun stuff in there.
I think one of the things we will all say, I think, is for people who haven't seen this, if you're a fan of the series, this is a great and fascinating watch.
Oh, yeah.
Just like Manhunter is a great and fascinating watch.
It's fun, yeah.
Whether you like these or not, there's something really unusual about being able to go to these very different interpretations of the same things.
And as someone who hasn't read the books and hadn't seen the films, if you're a big fan of the series, this will give you a new perception of the series, make you appreciate certain things more, certain things maybe less, and certainly add new context for you. So I would recommend it from that perspective as well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's wrap it there. We will be coming back next week with Hannibal Rising, and you hear that sound in my voice. That means we actually have to watch Hannibal Rising now.
All right.
We've put it off long enough.
I'm just going to jump in with you are going to watch Hannibal Rising. And I look forward to listening to you talk about Hannibal Rising.
I will say I would really love to hear you talk about Red Dragon. I will not make you watch Hannibal Rising. Kate, why don't you tell our listeners where they can find you online?
You can find me over at PopOptiq, POPTIQ.com, and that's where I'm the TV editor. And right now I'm reviewing Doctor Who. By the time you guys are hearing this, my most recent review should be up.
Awesome.
Also, you can find me over at the AV Club, where I'm currently reviewing Heroes Reborn. And of course, every week I have the Televerse podcast, which is where I talk about everything else. Oh, the Walking Dead podcast will be starting up at PopOptiq as well. And Cooper was just a guest co-host, I should say, of the Televerse with me a couple weeks ago.
It was a lot of fun.
It was good.
We
times.
talked about Scrubs.
We talked about many things. It was good times. And ladies, of course, I would love to have you come on. I don't know if you want to commit to guest co-hosting, but I would love to have you if you would.
sounds like fun.
You would both have a great time with that. That would, and it will probably be similar to me. Like, oh yeah, I haven't seen that. Oh no, I haven't seen that one either.
Oh, unfortunately, yeah.
I had to catch up with a few. She gave me we're going to talk about these things. It's like, okay, I can commit to watching those 4 shows before we
Yes.
But that's all over at PopOptiq, and you guys can find me on Twitter at the Televerse. And I always love talking Hannibal TV series. I can talk the film now too. Look at that, as well as the rest of TV. And thank you guys so much for having me back. And I'm so glad we could record in person. I felt terrible the last time you guys had me on. You were gracious to have me on, and I couldn't come in person. And there's so much background noise. It was all my fault, and I felt terrible. I was listening and going, I've ruined their podcast. So
not at all.
So
it was fine.
Thank you for having me. It's always
But
fun.
it was wonderful to have you back. Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Miko, where can they find you?
At Technicatia on Twitter, Miko Technicatia at Facebook, Technicatia.com, and at Life of the Swing Set.
Ophelia?
And they can find me at Ophelia Tesla for Twitter, and also Ophelia Tesla for Facebook, and OpheliaTesla@gmail.com.
I'm Cooper S. Beckett at Cooper S. Beckett, CooperSBeckett.com. I think it's Cooper.Beckett on Facebook, but if you look up Cooper S. Beckett, you'll find me. I host the Life on the Swing Set podcast, and my book, My Life on the Swing Set, Adventures in Swinging and Polyamory, is available at CooperSBeckett.com and MyLifeOnTheSwingSet.com. Just came out on Audible, which is very cool, and I think I've said that every time. You can find this show, which has 2 more episodes, at eattherudecast.com, eattherudecast.tumblr.com, Eat the Rudecast on Facebook, and at Eat the Rudecast. Did I actually get all of them?
You did.
Woo!
Yay!
Because usually you forget either Facebook or
Yeah,
Tumblr.
I do.
Tumblr. It's usually Tumblr.
It's usually
Yeah.
Tumblr.
Yeah.
Wow, second to last episode. and you brought it all home.
Nailed it.
It's never too late to get
No.
things right, as Lester Burnham says. As always, thank you for joining us at the table.
Oh, I have one last bit of trivia. I totally forgot that I want to add. You can do it as an
us.
outtake.
No, do it.
They actually shot at the real Palazzo Capone.
That's not surprising.
Yeah.
I had the feeling that everything in that was the real location.
Thomas Harris was friends with the owner of the building.
Wow.
Of course
So-
it was. Because what better thing than for the reclusive writer to be it's like, no, yeah, I just call him.
Yeah,
That's my
so
buddy.
he got the rights to
Wow.
shoot at the actual, which has documents dating back, they said, to the Crusades. So to be able to get in this
Amazing.
building.
I wonder
That's
if Thomas
pretty cool.
Harris held any of Dante's sonnets in his